like come October 15th, I will no longer be here. Okay? I'll just be at conference.
Well, I will be there with you, so
Nothing's gonna get done really, if you guys
we'll
are both gone.
have the mayor come sit down and hold down the fort.
I've done a bunch of plans here, and now that the
Nice hat.
Out of Crown Plaza. The ones you always see in the news where everything's being stolen from.
Yeah, it's a little scary, huh? You need to have, I mean, the reality is you need to have, if you're running a place, like you need to have security, or at least attendants or something that are walking around. Because I feel sorry for these people who are moving or and they just don't know and they leave a truck full of stuff there.
Yeah, well, you see that on the news all the time. Like their trailer was truck and trailer were stolen.
And it was supposed to be out.
It's messed up.
I didn't realize until Friday.
Better than that.
It wasn't out. We were found out and didn't have a big enough trailer. I was going to have to get a truck with a tow trailer.
There you go.
Let's call the meeting to order. Start the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the regular council meeting of August 16, 2017. No, that's minutes. September 6, 2017. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Councilors, do you have any questions, comments? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve this evening's agenda.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve tonight's agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Next item is the August 16th council meeting minutes, approval of those minutes. Questions or comments? Otherwise, I'll accept a motion on them. There were a number of mistakes and errors, but they've been taken care of that I could tell.
Mr. Mayor, I move we accept the Town of Edgewood regular council meeting minutes of August 16th, 2017.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the council meeting minutes for August 16th, 2017. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Next item is the consent agenda, and that's the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes for July 24th, 2017.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion we accept the consent agenda, the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes for July 24, 2017.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to accept the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes for July 24th, 2017. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Next item is action items, staff reports. First one up is Judge White.
Evening, everybody. Mr. Mayor and councilors. So this is a little bizarre tonight. If you remember the last meeting that I attended, I gave you a lot of information on bail bond stuff. Forget everything I told you, except that there are still no more orders to show cause. Everything's changed. Between the time that we had the judges' conference in Ruidoso and the time that the clerks met, I'm not sure where their conference was, but it was about a week or two later, everything had changed. All the guidance changed. So as you can imagine, the courts in New Mexico are in kind of a turmoil trying to figure out what's going on. It's not just our court, and it's not just municipal courts. These kinds of changes affect the courts at all levels. So I brought one of the documents that we've produced. One of the things we have to do now is have designees at the various jails where we might have somebody taken after a DUI or a reckless driving or whatever. So Kathy has been busy over the last couple of weeks coordinating with the Santa Fe County Detention Center. And we have appointed designees up there, not by name, but by position, and that's agreeable to the jail. I think I had indicated to you before that there are a lot of liability issues with the jails all around the state. This satisfies their needs, and it satisfies the dictates of the Supreme Court with regard to having to turn people loose with no bond, which is mostly the case. That's the bad end of these changes. The good end is that occasionally judges can hold people that have been found to be especially dangerous or guilty of especially egregious crimes. They can hold them without bond. But you should expect, and I've spoken to the chief about this, that almost everybody that's arrested on a Town of Edgewood municipal ordinance, with some exceptions that I'll read you here, they will be turned loose with no discretion and with their own and on their own recognizance. So let me read you what this says. This is my appointment order to the detention center up there that designates the folks that can do this. The designee shall release all persons arrested for a violation of a municipal ordinance on their own recognizance, subject to some conditions imposed in the standard forms of release that gives a form number. But there are some conditions that they impose. Except for those arrested for battery, negligent use of a deadly weapon, or DUI. DUI would be by far the most common circumstance where somebody was arrested, taken up there, and then in those cases I'd have to hold a bond hearing within 3 days. That's really not a change. But I talked to the chief about this, and I think you were aware of it. Is that not correct, Chief Crow?
Yes.
You were. So anyway, the particulars are still swirling around, but you hear people say, hey, if the police take somebody in, say for reckless driving, book them into Santa Fe, that person will literally be back on the street before our officers back in Edgewood. So that's what you can expect. I don't know what other changes are coming down the pike, but that's what we've got for right now. We're finding a way to live with that. In some ways, it doesn't make a lot of practical difference to us. In a few cases, it does. But anyway, I'd like to tell you I'm on top of this, but I don't know if anybody's on top of this particular buck and bronc. We're trying to
This is
sort
still
it out.
fallout from that Supreme Court decision?
Yes, sir. So
And
anyway.
if I might ask, what does the designee do?
For example, at Santa Fe, it can be anybody you want. You can appoint somebody by name or somebody by position. What we did was ask the jail who they'd like, and basically they'd like whoever's doing the booking official. And that kind of makes sense because whoever's up there,
Yeah.
if you have 15 people doing that booking job, doesn't make sense to appoint them by name, but appoint it by position. That's what we did.
And they can act in your stead up there?
They what?
They act in your stead up there or something, a designee? I mean,
Sir, I'm sorry, I still didn't hear you.
well, in other words, you said they're a designee. Do they get to act in your place up there or something? Do something that's,
So we had to appoint designees. For example, if we have, and we're still working this, almost always our people go up to Santa Fe,
Yeah.
to the jail up there. So that's where we got our designees first. If it looks like we're going to have people going to the Metro Detention Center, somebody picked up on a warrant maybe, then we'll have to get some designees there. And you're aware that I had briefed you, this at least hasn't changed, that our warrants are going to be good in adjacent counties now. So at some point, we'll probably need to get designees in those jails. Otherwise, they would call us and let us know they got somebody in there, and then we'll have to hop on it and get that person released ROR. Same standards apply. Now, there's a provision for, let me read what this says. The designee may contact a judge for special consideration based on exceptional circumstances when specific court direction is needed. So we're still kind of feeling our way through what those might be too. But anyway, that's the biggest change that I have to report to you all since the last time around. Any questions on my monthly report? It's pretty standard. Okay. One of these days, somebody's going to call my bluff and ask me what's in that, And as always, we're available to answer questions. It doesn't have to be in a meeting. Mr. Mayor, do you or any of your councilors have any questions?
No, I think I've asked all the questions I have, council.
Okay. Rita Loy, you get the best hat of the night. Sorry there, Councilor Abrams, yours just doesn't cut it next to that, you know. Okay.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Judge.
Counselor
Yes, sir.
Holly brought it for me to go into the parade, but unfortunately, I was
You played hooky from the parade, I know.
I
Claiming
did.
sickness.
claiming. So what I've done is paraded tonight.
I think it brightens the whole place up.
I think it's great. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, folks.
Thank you,
Good
Judge.
night.
Thank you, Judge.
Council, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion to accept the judge's monthly report for August 2017.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to accept Judge White's report for the month of August 2017. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Next item, discussion, consideration, and action on ratifying the hire of Road Department Heavy Equipment Operator, Manuel Madrid. Manuel, come on up to the podium here. Norton, you want to introduce your new employees?
Council, Mr. Mayor, this is Manuel Madrid. Manuel comes to us from NMDOT. He spent 15 years out at Klein's Corners, keeping your freeways clear, or trying to, and so he's decided, now he lives here in Edgewood, right up off of Dinkle, and decided he wanted a little shorter drive to work. So we're glad that he's decided to join
Go ahead
us.
and step up there and tell us a little something about yourself and introduce yourself.
Hey, hi, my name is Manny Madrid. I attended Santa Rosa High School, graduated in Santa Rosa. I worked for the Department of Transportation for 15 years. I moved out here in Edgewood 12 years and decided to give the DOT, give the town of Edgewood a chance. I wanted to apply and the opportunity to work here, town of Edgewood, and I'm married. I've been married for 9 years. My beautiful wife, Julie. I have 3 kids. My oldest is Nathaniel. Manny's the middle one. And my little girl, Gracie. And that's it.
Thank you. Council, what we did on this, Norton had some jobs coming and stuff, and we had that big, long break in here, so I gave him the temporary appointment to the job pending y'all's approval of it, but basically both of them passed all the background checks and everything like that. And they're certified with their CDLs and they're operating on equipment stuff. Everything was good to go, so we thought go ahead and get them in working and hope that you guys were amenable to bringing them on full time.
Well, ratifying is probably expedient. However, I would like to meet Mr. Valencia.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
This is Matthew Valencia. Matthew comes to us from the Torrance County Road Department. He spent 5 years with them, so it's
Good evening. My name is Matthew Valencia, and I graduated from Pecos High School. Moved out here to McIntosh. I've been out here about 7 years. I work with the road department 5. I'm married. Got 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. Terrible. And just trying to better myself by joining the town of Edgewood.
Thank you, Matthew.
I have something to say. I know Mr. Manuel Madrid and his wife Julie. I've known them since they purchased their house here. I've seen him working on the roads up on Williams Ranch Road, and I can tell you he's a good equipment operator. So welcome.
You can vouch for him.
I can.
Well, that was the subject I was going to bring up is the test will be when those blades come by.
Yeah.
And as you go through my yard, lift your blade a little bit. I've got some black stuff under there. But because there's no other place to turn around, you turn around in my front yard, which is all right with me. I don't mind. I too went to Estancia for a couple of years,
when my dad was project manager for Central New Mexico Electric Cooperative. But the fact that you come from Pecos means you know something about snow, too.
Yeah, we get lots of it out there.
Yeah, so I think between the two of you, and Klein's Corners can be dicey, I know. So I'm very pleased to see you both. Good luck.
So council, while they are both here tonight, they are listed here as separate individual actions. So let's take up the first one on manual there.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we ratify the hire of Road Department Heavy Equipment Operator Manuel Madrid.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to ratify and approve the hire of Manuel Madrid for heavy equipment operator. Let's do a roll call, start on that end. Counselor Abrams.
Aye.
Counselor Simmons.
Aye.
Counselor Abraham.
Aye.
Counselor Holly.
Aye.
Welcome aboard.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we ratify the hire of heavy equipment operator Matthew Valencia.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve, ratify and approve the hire of heavy equipment operator Matthew Valencia. Start on this end. Counselor Holly.
Aye.
Counselor Abraham.
Aye.
Counselor Simmons.
Aye.
Counselor Abrams.
Aye.
Thank you, council. Officially welcome aboard.
Yeah, and we wave.
Council, just a quick update too. I wanted to bring you up to speed on all of our street lights, all of our illuminated signs now, all of our signal lights are all LED. Everything's been completed, okay? So we're good to go on those. And then Dinkle Road got chip sealed, about a mile and a quarter. Yeah. And we finished that back in July. The chip seal portion of it, we just fog sealed it last week. And striping is hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and that'll all be completed. So that should hold us for another 7 or 8 years on that. We put a double penetration chip on it, so it should hold up real well. So
Please remind me which mile and a half.
it's approximately from Meadowlark going east to about 1,200 feet past Bassett Boulevard. It was the remainder of chip that was there that hadn't been overlaid yet, and it was deteriorating. So we decided to apply another 2 layers of chip so that we could keep it
I
and
do
not
know
have to
of
replace
another
it.
road that could use some of that.
We have many that need it, yes.
I have a question. NMDOT did something on that little portion between Williams Ranch Road and Fruit Loop Lane or whatever it is there. They put something down, and I think they smashed it. I don't know what it was. But now it's just a mess. It's got potholes.
Probably
everywhere.
millings, probably asphalt millings. I haven't seen it, Counselor, so I really can't say, but lots of times I know DOT over on that section will haul millings in their asphalt millings and lay them down. And unfortunately, because they don't have a lot of binder in them, they tend to washboard extremely bad. So
Yeah, I think the road was better before.
yeah.
Okay.
So, okay, just wanted to update you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henninger, Mr. Valencia, Mr. Madrid.
Welcome.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Next items, discussion items, public comments on general matters. Janelle Turner.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilors. I just wanted to talk about roads a little bit, and good thing that Norton's here. I wanted to remind you that in 2005, the town put something down on Square H Road. I'm not sure what it was called, Norton. You may remember what that stuff was. But it didn't bind together as promised, and when it fell apart, it left big chunks. And I've been noticing the last few days that it's starting to pop up to the surface again. What's going on with that?
What was supplied to that road was millings.
Millings. Yeah.
Which that's where Ken was complaining about
Right.
over on the frontage road. And yes, they do not bind together very well when they wash or tear. And that, when they put it down, that was part of a pile that came out of Cedillo Hill.
Right.
which had chunks in it like this.
Right.
And at the time, I recommended that we not do it.
I remember that. I remember that very well.
And so, and for good reasons why.
Right. And the council decided differently, as I recall, yes.
Yeah, we've
So,
been dealing with that. We've tried to pull big chunks out of it and haul them down and put them in some of the low-lying areas, some of the draws where people were getting stuck and stuff. But, you know, we're going to have to go back and put another layer of base course on it at some point.
thank you. We would appreciate it. I was walking down the stretch the other night, and it's, particularly when it's starting to get dark, it's dangerous. You know, it will trip you. So, and no one here was responsible for overruling the road department on that, so I'm not going to throw rocks at any of you. The other thing I wanted to say was I wanted to thank you, Mayor, for making code enforcement, you know, bringing it back to a priority. My neighborhood had been looking really shabby, and your code enforcement people have been working with people in my neighborhood, and they have been very appreciative of the fact that they're not being, you know, bulldozed or anything. They are getting plenty of time to deal with the issues. And I think it has a big effect on the attractiveness of the town and the saleability of homes. I've got a neighbor who's been trying to sell her house, and she's got a lot of negative feedback about the appearance of our neighborhood. So whatever you can do to encourage that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Next up, Julia Wood.
I'm glad Norton and his crew are here. In 32 years, Edgewood, Pinion Road right here has never looked or felt as good. I mean, the buses are the ones that really ribbit, and then some neighbors that don't know how to get off the gas. But you guys have been really working at it, and it's working. Thank you. And I also want to thank Animal Control for their little fire sale on kitty cats, because we took home a kitten that's smarter than any kitten we've ever known. So now his name is not Motorboat, but Einstein. Or Al, Bird, you know. And please, 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 keep the temporary art. The Eiffel Tower was supposed to be temporary. There's a copy of the Acropolis in Nashville, Kentucky, Tennessee, that was supposed to be temporary. They have both all added. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say we're working. I think we have that all worked out. I think they're all going to become permanent structures.
That will add to our quality of life and attract people. Cool. We need, Albuquerque's had it for years, we need a no chaining dogs ordinance. One sentence, vote on it right now, give it a number, and pass it, please. My neighbors never let one dog off the chain. And it is cruel. I can't tell if he's got food and water, but I've had them checked periodically. They also have a Chihuahua that never stops barking. I have a new friend who raises, trains, and shows dogs. She says a dog that barks all the time is in distress. I think Animal Control could be self-supporting. If you tell them, pick up the dog, it costs X amount to get him back, and to get him back, you have to take X number of classes that cost $35, $45, and how to teach the owners to train their dogs not to bark. If our guys don't know it, they can learn. Just saying. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'd like, since everything's going on a nice positive note, about the dogs on a chain, county has just passed an ordinance, or looks like they're going to pass it, getting rid of the chain and the
cable.
So once they adopt that, we have to adopt it. So,
Thank you. That makes sense.
yes.
Yes. In the state law.
So it's working its way down. We're in the middle, correcting the right track.
Thank you for letting me know.
Thank you, Chief.
We just found out this morning about that, actually.
That's all that are signed up. Does anybody else like to speak? Tapping.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just have a simple request and update from governing body on the status of the sewer collection designs.
I beg your pardon, say that again, please.
The sewer collection system design,
What about it?
an update for the public.
We're waiting to hear.
Hopefully we'll have an update on next meeting from Smith
Asking
Engineering.
the same question.
Okay. Along those lines, I have some property sewer service application was submitted in 2015. I've recently been communicating with current staff to no avail of a status for design to that property. It has been over 2.5 years now.
What we know on that is that I believe it will be refunded to them.
No, actually, I thought in our letter, we were kind of, because our files are old, I thought I had asked in the letter if you guys have the contract, kind of the, what is it called?
Sewer service
The
agreement.
sewer service agreement. We're looking at old files, so I was hoping you had some files that we could kind of meet and look over with.
So, and I've documented in a response letter that I believe your reference to is to an ordinance that's been rescinded and rewritten.
Yeah.
And your current 2015-03 ordinance is what governs.
Yes, but the
And-
2003 ordinance, I guess in my reading said there'd be like the sewer service agreement. I was hoping you'd have a copy of that.
Actually, I understand that the town is contracted with a consultant to design the sewer system, which includes that property. And if they're designing areas outside of those that have applied, why is that?
I was thinking of, like, the sewer system design to me is the sewer system design, your letter about that property specifically, because it came in as an application. I was hoping you would help us kind of fill out the file. Maybe you had more paperwork on the original application.
Actually, I've requested some records. It's back to the town, is where do we stand on the sewer system design? Because, again, you have contracted with a consultant, as I understand it, to provide sewer service to the service area, a particular service area which this property lies, and you have a design, I believe, underway, and I'm curious if that is not in the plan, why would that be?
We do have a design underway, and it is in the plan.
However, the construction will be phased, as you know.
So the service to our property is in the design?
That's in the design area.
Service on New Mexico 332 in front of that property is in the plan.
Okay, so that's why I'm asking is the time frame, the schedule.
There is
That
no
was
timeframe
established.
for construction yet, but the design will be completed here soon,
Yeah.
probably less than 30
That's why we
days
were
away.
planning to maybe have Smith out here at the next meeting to give us an update.
Okay, so again, I'm inquiring specific to our property because the status of the design, I thought it would have been set when you signed the contract. So we would kind of know pretty swiftly when we would have the design done.
When you signed the contract under the old ordinance,
I'm talking about the contract that you all signed with the consultant.
well, it's being worked on. It hasn't been completed yet.
Okay, so maybe I'll try to be a little more clear is, I would assume, maybe this is a bad thing when you assume, makes a, what out of some of us, is that when you signed the contract, there was an area defined to design. And within that area, you also had a schedule that you would identify when those lines or those areas would be designed within that time frame. So if you have a service area, our property lies within that service area, do you not have a schedule in your design contract of when that line will be designed?
Not in front of us, no. Cody was supposed to be coming with stuff like that. I'm pretty sure that one's not going to be the first one designed or built.
Well,
or
there is a
whatever.
design schedule. There's not a
Yeah.
construction schedule.
Right.
Design's always the first part. That's my
Right,
question.
right.
Where is design for the service in our property? And hence, there's neighbors next to us that are unserved. Where's that in the town's plan?
Mayor, Council, Tappan, I think to answer your question, we have completed 30% design and they are working on 60%, and that's where we're currently at.
For
So,
what
for
areas?
the service area.
And when that's designed, will you bring it to council so
Yes.
that we can approve it, or?
Yes, we'll bring it before council. That's what we're saying. We're going to have Cody hopefully here at the next meeting to give us a status update on the project.
I keep asking the same question, is when are we going to have an update?
So again, with the understanding this was in 2015, and you've since implemented services to serve the service area, or a service area, is there a plan for the construction?
I guess it'll follow the design. Get finished with the design and look at the construction.
Are there other applicants ahead of us?
Don't know.
Does anybody know?
I'm not privy to the people that have brought them in since 2015, so I couldn't tell you just who all's lined up in what order.
Okay, so in the design, I'm sure I'm getting close to my 2 minutes, if you'd give me a wave. I guess I'm going along the lines again, you signed a contract to design lines within the service area, and there's a schedule to follow that. I would assume that you had a list of the customers, obviously you weren't aware of our application, that have paid for a service, and I'm asking, is that taking precedence in order to lead into construction, or is it not?
I do not believe it is.
I don't think it is.
We do not, we don't have any funding for construction. All we had funding for was design.
Okay, so is the design taking precedence for those that have applied for the service?
We're designing the entire service area.
Okay, so the entire service area should just kind of fall together all at the same time?
The design for it, yes.
Okay. And is that something that is in some file that we could get a copy of, which has been our request? What is the schedule?
I guess if Cody gets out here.
I'm confused at the questioning, first of all. I think that the design and schedule are to be presented to us, at least to the council, and as a item that the public will be welcome to view at the next council meeting. Can you hold that until the next council meeting, or is that not possible? We don't have the information, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
And until we have the information, we don't have the information. I don't get where you're going.
I'm kind of going on twofold. If you signed a contract to do the design, there's a schedule or a scope identified, you should have that, and I've asked for that. And certainly if it's not till the next meeting, I need to wait for that. That's what it is, but why? Or do I need to put a formal written request for certain records?
Certainly you're welcome to request any records. But if we don't have all of the design and schedule in hand, I mean, we don't have it. And that's where we're at. That's what we're saying.
So council doesn't have that, but
I don't have it.
But I understand that it is available. It was just presented,
I
correct?
believe I heard that it is not available yet. If it's not available to me, it certainly isn't in someone's hands at the town office yet.
Susan, can I clarify that? Juan Torres, didn't you just say that 30% design is almost complete?
30% design is complete.
So there's a schedule available. You got 30% of something complete.
Do we have that available?
Yeah, we've got a rough 30% design.
Is it empirical or is it specific?
It's empirical. It's the entire service area.
All right.
I guess I have a question. Why are we accepting applications for service to a collection line that's not built?
Well, this application was made in 2015?
This was
In anticipation of a line?
This was
being
made in
built?
2015, and if I remember the 2015 ordinance correct, or the ordinance in place at the time, the applicant has the option, essentially, they request a sewer service. We'll say if it's available. Now, if the line's not available to them, then the town can say, yes, we're going to construct this line, and let them know that's what Carla was asking for the agreement. Or if not, then we can say, you need to connect over here, pay for that connection, and then as other people connect, they be reimbursed for it. I believe that's what that ordinance stated.
They're kind of two separate issues to me, and that's where I'm getting them confused. The application in 2015, the person sitting in the administrative role said in the letter back to New Mexico Development, yes, sewer service is available. But that's where that letter ended. And according to the ordinance, following that letter should have been some sort of sewer service agreement. That is what we're missing from our files and what I hope Tappan had in his files.
And if I may, I believe, sorry,
Go
I
ahead.
mean, interrupt. Your current ordinance has the same provision. 2015-03 has the same provision that you're referring to. But again, I'm going back to you all hired a consultant since then to design service lines within the service area. Our property is one of those. And because we have an application in place, I'm asking if it in the priority or is it in the sequence to get the design and ultimately, on some schedule, construction completed. That's what I'm asking
That's where I'm
for.
making the disconnect, I guess. In the original application, I was hoping, back in the original application, the county determined there was sewer service available because it's within 200 feet of the property in question. So I thought even back then, they determined sewer service is here, it's available, go ahead and connect. What I was looking for from you was some sort of plan that you guys would have connected to the sewer service as it exists there already.
Except there is no service available.
But there was. I mean, there was sewer close.
Mhm.
And I thought the determination was then you would connect to that sewer line.
No, the way I recall the ordinance, certainly it's a topic of discussion, but again, I'm going back to the ordinances that are in play, were, at the time of application, the provisions for, you referred to the sewer service agreement is still in effect in the current 2015-03 ordinance. Since those ordinances, the town has entered into a contract for design of this sewer collection system for areas that are not currently served. I'm one. I'm only one.
In 2015, they determined the area was served. The sewer connection was within 200 feet of that property. Isn't that what the letter from Steve said? Sewer
No.
service is available. Go ahead and connect.
No.
Okay.
It says sewer service is available, but by the terms and the definitions in the ordinance, it means that you can accept the sewer service.
And clarify for me, you're hoping that you're first in the quay?
I'm hoping that I'm in the quay.
Okay.
First is not the priority, but I understand you guys are under contract and have no public information that I've seen to anybody that shows whether that line is in there. The fact that it's been 2 years and we have played and we've been waiting is the concern.
Sometimes the wheels turn slowly. But like I say, that is the plan, to have somebody here from Smith at the next meeting to bring everybody up to date on where they're at with it.
Okay, in the meantime, I can submit a request for what you'd have.
Knock yourself out.
Very well.
Anybody else like to speak? Mr. Seegers?
Sorry, I missed the sign up there. My name is Ray Seegers. I'm a businessman here in the town. And later on in the agenda, we're going to come to some public hearings. And I see at fault a portion of our zoning law that has caused us to have to make some changes. And I really think if we take a good look at the portion of our zoning law, and this is not tonight's subject, but I'd like to be a subject at some point in time, the home occupation portion. It's nebulous, it's hard to understand, it doesn't work in this modern world the way it's written. And I served on a focus group in Santa Fe County with their last round of zoning, and I think that's a very good way to approach this type of change, is to get a focus group of individuals that are in home occupations, have something against home occupations, have particular complaints. Because I do see some of the things we're changing now coming out of that ordinance the way it's written. And I think it could be much broader because 48% of the licenses, business licenses in Edgewood, are home occupations. It's a big part of our business community. And from the Chamber's point of view, and I'm a director on the Chamber of Commerce here, you know, we can see that it's flawed and needs study. And I just recommend that maybe we get a focus group together, a variety of opinions, don't throw it all on the planning staff, they're very busy, and get it started. And they might very well be the moderator for something like that. That's how we did it in the county. And anyway, that's my opinion, and I think it's worth considering.
Thank you, Mr. Seegers. Anybody else?
If I were to start a home business and someone from the town, from P&Z, wanted to inspect my business, before they're admitted onto the property, they had better be fully trained in what that business requires, the cleanliness, the facilities for children, whether my eggs are better than the neighbor's eggs. And that's all I've got to sell, but Joy Box is going to sell them for me.
Next item on the agenda is matters from Moriarty.
One more, somebody else wanted to.
Oh, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor Bassett and Council, Rebecca and Carla. My name is Catalina Parker. I used to be a Rio Grande Zoo keeper for the city of Albuquerque. I retired in 2011, and that made a 30-year career for me. I am all in favor of people taking care of their animals responsibly. That's what I did for the Rio Grande Zoo. I was in charge of rhinos and hippos, some of the most endangered animals I took care of. I know what it is to take care of animals correctly, to be responsible for them. I have had a problem with my neighbor with dogs. Called animal control, worked with a very nice man there, his name is Tim. I understand that there is not any legislature, anything to tell us that we can't have too many animals. Right now, if I understand, you can have up to 10 dogs in the city of Edgewood. Is there anyone here who can tell me if that's correct or not?
At this time, yeah.
You're working? Okay, my neighbor, he has, I don't know how many dogs because they're in the back, but they are nuisance barkers. 4:30 in the morning, they howl and bark. What I think is going on is one of the people living in the home gets up and gets ready for work. That's when the chaos starts. They don't leave. They leave, the person leaves, and the dogs continue to bark. Yet I can't explain to you how horrible this situation is. We have to have some kind of common sense here. A nuisance barking law, a law that limits people from having too many dogs, something. We need something. Because if we don't, letting their dogs loose at night, I mean, it has caused chaos in our neighborhood. I don't think any of my other neighbors who I know are upset about this, they're not going to come here. They're not going to speak publicly. But I told them that I would. Again, I thank Tim. He worked with me very closely. I kind of unloaded on him. I also talked with Carla Salazar and Rebecca. Thank you, ladies. That's it. I just wanted to let you guys know. I really don't know how to get the ball rolling, but I'm here, and I'm the voice. So if there's something I need to do, I will do it. I will be there. Any council meeting you guys have, any kind of vote you guys have, I will be there. I just need to know when it is. Yes.
We are working on revising our animal control ordinance. At that time, there will be public hearings.
Okay.
That you guys can come and speak about and give input, and that's
Awesome.
always greatly appreciated.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for your time. I just keep in touch with you guys then?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to add one comment. I think size of lot would have something to do with numbers.
Of dogs?
Yeah, if a half-acre lot is one thing, and 5-acre lot is another. It always travels, though, in the country, so.
Next item then on the agenda tonight is matters from Moriarty Edgewood School District. Mr. Sullivan.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors, staff, and community members. I have a couple of quick things. Just a maybe a couple of things about the school and the start of the year, but more importantly, I have an update that the mayor asked me to get for you on an amended lease for the next round of renovations at the Edgewood Elementary site, and I think it is good news. But real quickly, the year's off to a good start with the schools. Lots of moving parts, so there are always some minor glitches at the beginning of the year, but from most indicators, it's probably been as smooth a beginning as we've had in quite some time. We opened a brand-new facility on the high school campus about 3 weeks ago. The mayor was kind enough to attend. It was a ribbon cutting for a vocational technical education center. It includes welding, woods, drafting, and auto under one roof. About a $4 million project, and it came out very, very nicely. We've got our first home football game Friday evening, and homecoming the following weekend. You're all most welcome to come and join us. But the topic that I think you may be more interested in is the one around our partnership, and I have 10 copies of the packet. I'll hand it to Councilman Neighbors, if that's okay, Mayor, and we can pass them along. I don't know whether Ms. Holly remembers, but I think the rest of the group does. When we first entered into the lease for the south portion of the north building, it required us to jump through some hoops with the State Board of Finance. The State Board of Finance has oversight responsibility for our public buildings, and if we change the use of them, i.e. lease to you folks, or take them out of commission, dispose of tangible property, we have to get a permission from the State Board of Finance. Our original lease went through several iterations back and forth with their staff lawyers and Mr. Torres and Mayor Bassett and myself. Ultimately, it was approved, and their approval had to precede the actual final adoption of the lease language by both our governing entities, meaning your council and our school board. The proposed change for your eligibility with the Finance Authority for capital funds to renovate the north part of that north wing effectively amends the lease, and it kicked back into gear that we had to bring it to the Board of Finance for revision, or approval of the revision, I should say. Juan and the mayor did have attorneys, I think the town's attorney for one, and then an attorney with the Board of Finance, no, it wasn't, it was the Finance Authority's attorneys, looked at it. They came up with language that we were comfortable with. We submitted it to the Board of Finance for inclusion on their agenda for approval next Tuesday. They want packets of material that are going to be acted upon a full 4 weeks in advance of the meeting. So the packet that you have is the cover letter that we put together to get on the agenda for next Tuesday with the language that the two attorneys representing the town modified for us. In anticipation of tonight's meeting, I contacted the same Ms. Maestas, who is the deputy director and has been shepherding us through this, and she indicated that the packet was fine. It had been reviewed by their staff attorneys, and it was going to be placed on consent agenda next Tuesday. That is what happened with the original lease, and Mr. Torres and Mayor Bassett and I had driven up there in case there were questions, in case it was pulled from the consent agenda. Rather than leaving their staff to answer on our behalf, we went up there. It wasn't necessary. I would just as soon not take that chance. It's easy enough for me to drive up on Tuesday, be there physically. If it's on consent agenda, great. If they remove it, I'll be there. I'm going to suggest to our board that we put it on our agenda for acceptance even if I haven't gotten the official, document back from them, if they act in public and I see it done, I'm going to put it on our agenda next Tuesday night. Not next Tuesday, 2 weeks, the 19th. We have a meeting the same night.
The 19th is the date you sent me for the Board of Finance.
Yeah, and that's in the morning, and our board meeting is that evening.
Gotcha.
I'm thinking that you folks might want to consider the same thing, putting it on your next meeting, and, assuming we might even have something that's official and in writing from that point, but you can always remove something from an agenda. You can't add it at the last minute. So I'm confident that it's going to go through. I appreciate the help from Mr. Torres and the mayor on it, and I think it's another step in a good partnership. I've heard great things about the way, I've been to the building several times, and I've visited with Andrea. I think the library project is awesome. You guys should be very proud.
Yeah. I was just looking at it here, and I think the biggest thing is that number 17, council on termination. That was the one that had them most bent out of shape. But anyway, it's up there.
And I'm sorry that it just seems to drag out. I know that you folks were anxious and chomping at the bit, but their wheels turn slowly, just as Mr. Mahoney was pointing, you were pointing out to Mr. Mahoney.
Yeah, when they only have that one meeting a month, it's tough to line up and hit it just right.
But I'm optimistic, and I appreciate the help from the town on this as well.
I have a question. Okay. The loan is the linchpin here. Is that correct?
My understanding from the correspondence I saw from your attorneys, and please, the mayor, Juan, can elaborate, is that it didn't make sense for the finance authority to have a note with you that exceeded the lease termination time frame. And I get that. So we completely agree, and apparently they see the logic behind that as well.
Oh, thank goodness for your perseverance, both of you. All three of you.
Yeah. We'll probably see you in Santa Fe on the 19th.
I'm going to go, Mayor. If you guys have a conflict, don't worry about it. I think we'll be fine. But I just don't want to take the chance.
About the same way, try to get it over the finish line.
Mayor, then would you like me to put it on our agenda for the 20th?
Yeah, you can put it on there.
Okay.
Yeah, I would call your attention to the bottom paragraph on that cover letter. They're real specific about that. Their action has to precede the final action by the governing bodies of our two entities.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that you're encouraging us and offering to hold hands.
Be glad to answer any other questions about the district.
No, I think you've answered most of the questions we had on this topic here. That's what I was kind of wondering about, and your emails came through today, and thank you for bringing this.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is matters from the mayor. You've got in your packets here this proposed schedule of quarterly staff reports. We looked it over and figured, well, the judge, planning and zoning, and police will probably continue on a monthly basis, and then we'll just rotate around either road department, library report, parks and rec.
I would like to see, because of the whole wastewater thing, I would like to see that department give us a quarterly report as well. Maybe in conjunction with the road department, or I just feel like that's a real important one for us to keep a handle on as well.
You know, I appreciate what she's saying because we're kind of feeling left in the dark ourselves.
Well, the work's gone along a little bit, but it's just not far enough. That's why we kind of lined Cody up to come in and bring us up to date on it.
And maybe if we just get quarterly updates, like this is what has been done so far, this is what the next process is. You know, we were having all those meetings about what we're going to do, and everything seemed real urgent, and now everything's like dead in the water.
Yep.
And then
So I
Other
think
than
that's-
that, will those quarterlies work for you like that?
Yeah, I think that this is expedient because everybody's really busy. One of the complaints in public education is the constant testing. And, you know, that's sort of the same thing, the constant reporting. And reports are important, but as long as they're not earth-shattering. But I would like you to keep in mind that at any given time that we need a report out of turn or out of order, that you would please put it in.
Yep. The next item then for me is facilities update. This isn't quite one of ours, but nevertheless, this is today's Independent. We've got a picture on there of the grand opening down here for New Mexico Medical's new urgent care center located down by the Beehive. Counselor Simmons and Abraham and I were down there last Friday, and they had the ribbon cutting. He's physician assistant, but Mark Beverly here, he's the guy that's brought it there. He's going to have, you can read the story, but anyway, he's going to have an x-ray facility, CAT scan. He's got like 4 or 5 exam rooms. He can do blood testing on site and get you an answer back pretty quickly if you come in there with a problem. Going to be open like 4 to 9 in the evenings. Quite a nice little facility he's got there. And I'll let the counselors tell you more about it when they speak here, but I'd urge anybody to go down and check it out. It's a pretty nice facility, and he's hoping to build it into something even bigger, so.
Can you pass it on down to us?
Yeah, the other one, I see it up here, nobody knows about our plight but us. I did hear an update on the prison closing in Estanton. It's not very good. They're not figuring that anything's going to come along very timely. So it's all in the paper there, but look at it there. The other one is another newspaper story here. This one appeared in the Santa Fe New Mexican. Pass that down to him. And this is a story, last week we went up, Councilor Holly and former Councilor Ring and I went up to Santa Fe to the County Commission, and we took a check to them for the amount of $35,000 to put toward the infrastructure needs for the new First Choice Clinic they're planning up here. Our hope is that that will be spent to install them an on-site sewer. The project there with First Choice is very close to a groundbreaking, and that's what's in the story here. It gives some statistics on how many people are using it and stuff like that. But basically, as Krista Kelly mentions in here, they're hoping for maybe a late fall groundbreaking. So that plus the urgent care, that's a pretty good pickup for the town of Edgewood on both fronts. Anyway, that's what we were doing last week. The money from this was going to be our match from a CDBG grant that didn't come through, so we just decided to go ahead and give it to Santa Fe County so they can get busy putting it toward the construction of it and get the thing started building. As Mr. Sullivan noted, we're probably going to be going up to Santa Fe on the 19th to see the Board of Finance yet again and look at that amended lease. That's it for facilities update. The update on the Joe Campbell appeal. The applicants that were in here to see us the other night, they have withdrawn their application, and the town went ahead and gave them a business license and closed the books on this matter. It will not be going back to P&Z for any further work. So they're good to go to work. The upcoming fall agendas, this is one, I noticed something the other day and got me thinking because we've got an election coming up. In the next 3 to 4 months, we're going to have to be coming with an election resolution. We're going to have to come with our annexation on the moratorium for the election. Both of them, looking at past efforts, were done about by December. And this year on the ballot, we need to place some questions. Chief among them, in my estimation, is the possible repeal of the ban on Sunday dinner sale. That's 52 days a year that we don't get any revenue from that.
It goes to Moriarty, doesn't it?
It goes to Moriarty. They even put on extra people when it's something like Super Bowl down there. But anyway, we need to be thinking about if there's anything else maybe to put on the ballot. But that's one that comes to mind. Also, we're going to be doing more of the infill annexation zone map amendments will be coming in. As somebody noted, well, you told her, the animal control ordinance is about ready to bring back with the changes we've got figured for that. And along with that will be a tweak to the zoning ordinance on the conditional use stuff. We've also got started looking there today at this mining blasting ordinance that we are going to have to get in place because Red's needing to get his blasting permits and stuff down here. And Santa Fe County's told him come see us, so we've got to get something in place there so we can issue permits and stuff.
How close can we mirror what their permitting process was?
We can get pretty close. It's a pretty thick one they've got, and so the first order of business is going to be to see what we can maybe cull out of it that we don't need. Whittle it down to something more sizable for us, yeah.
Their blasting permit is larger than our zoning permit or subdivision ordinance.
Yeah.
Their blasting ordinance is longer and more in-depth than our zoning ordinance and our subdivision ordinance.
But, okay, so these will have public hearings.
Oh, yeah.
What if the public says, no, we don't want blasting here?
They can tell you that, and you can decide to not do it.
But does a grandfather clause have anything?
It does.
For the business in place?
That's all stuff we'll have to look at. He accepted the SU zoning that came with it, that, was assigned by the town. That was the closest thing we had for him. And his expectation is to keep, as long as there's rock to take out of there, keep trying to mine it and sell it.
I think planning and zoning can probably speak to that, Michelle.
Actually, we do have a small section in the ordinance already that allows it. And with the annexation, from what I've understood, it would automatically be grandfathered in. Right now, we are accepting and letting them operate underneath the county's permit that they already have. And it's good for 2 months until we get ours in place.
That does cover a bit of a mining operation.
Yes.
Under SU. That's why we put in for that.
Yes, but ours is very simple. It's only like 3 sentences compared to the very 42 pages that comes from Santa Fe County.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, there's a very fine line between doing something for somebody and doing it to them.
Yep.
And that's where government errs so often, is they set out to do the for and end up doing it to us.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things we need to be looking at. And there may be some additional zone ordinance amendments, as Mr. Seegers was talking about. Randy, on that front, my question to you is, so these are land use ordinances, and I've heard Bob White say you have to do 2 hearings for every little change or whatever. Can you speak to that? Do we have to have 2 hearings for every little thing that comes on these land use ordinances?
Mayor, there's 2 issues that, I'll speak to general matters, general ordinance issues. For general ordinances, you have to have a publication of at least 2 weeks prior to the ordinance being heard, and then the ordinance may be heard and it may be acted upon. You don't have to have a second hearing on that ordinance unless you choose to.
Yeah.
If, like, for example, with the subdivision ordinance, it was such a big change, multiple hearings were appropriate, so you can have more hearings, but you don't have to. And I'm not aware of anything specific with land use that would change that general rule. I will make sure and check once again, but I am not aware of anything for an ordinance amendment.
Yeah.
You do have to then, and then of course you have to republish once you've passed it, and then the ordinance is effective 5 days after publication.
Well, anyways, we've got a busy fall in front of us with probably a fair number of hearings, but like I say, the one that, you know, is not on the radar all the time is the election coming. And so we'll have 2 seats up, plus, like I say, we need to certainly get at least that one question on the ballot, and we need to be thinking of anything else we might want to put on there. Nothing pops into my head right off, but.
What question on the ballot are you speaking of?
Sunday sales.
Oh, Sunday sales,
Yeah.
excuse me.
That's one that I think we've all seen, and maybe it's time to revisit it. Let's see. The next item is Fire Impact Fee Committee. Councilor Abraham was in there this morning, and since we talked, we've even stumbled across a couple other things to share with you.
Mr. Mayor, item 3, did you address that?
Which one?
Number 3?
Yeah, Joe Campbell.
Oh, you know, my mind went to a larger issue. And I'm thinking, what do you know that?
Is this the same one you gave me earlier?
Yeah.
We seem to have one extra.
It was
Somebody
mine
has-
because he gave me one earlier.
Oh,
We
okay.
can just put.
Just making sure
the public
everybody's-
wants to look at it.
Yeah. So, in doing some research on this advisory committee's got a checkered past. It started out back in 2003, it was mentioned at a council meeting, there was an appointment of Impact Fee Advisory Committee. People named off, some of them have passed away by now. Anyway, the next thing they did was adopt the ordinance, this one here, and they referred to it in there. Then it comes to 2009, they started out again, and that had kind of an interesting sequence of events. They brought up the appointment of, and first they said, well, yeah, there's a standing committee or something like that already there. Then they decided they were going to go with planning and zoning plus a member of the development community. Then they decided they wanted a resolution. And at the meeting following that, they came in with the resolution 2009-34, which nobody can find. We have a list of resolutions for 2009. That resolution is listed here, but in any of the computer files we've looked at and that thick notebook in there, that one's missing. 33 is in there, 35 is in there, 34 is not in there. Don't know just what all it said. But anyway, they decided then in October of that year to just go ahead and they appointed P&Z plus a member of the development community, and that's what they went with that year. And we cranked out that report you've got there. So come along now, and what we've run into is a couple things. We have that state statute, which sets out here what the advisory committee can be made up of. It's got the 40% of the membership must be represented in real estate development or building industries, and no member shall be employees or officials of a municipality or county or other governmental entity. And that's where the Governmental Conduct Act comes in. We did our report in 2010. In 2011, they upgraded this Governmental Conduct Act. They made it swing wider and cover more people. Now it lists a public officer or employee means any elected or appointed official or employee of a state agency or local government who receives compensation in the form of salary or is eligible for per diem or mileage, but excludes legislators. So P&Z, number one, they get paid now, but they are appointed officials. So in all likelihood, we can't go that route. So the 2011, like it says, virtually every person working in every governmental entity within New Mexico that is created by state law or local ordinance is now under this Governmental Conduct Act. So agencies, boards, commissions, everything, judges, court staff. So I think this pretty much precludes everything. Councilor Abraham, when we were in there, we were wondering what do they have to do? It's basically in this ordinance here. So this ordinance may need to be upgraded, updated a little bit, and I think for sure the description of the advisory committee, that probably needs taken from something that essentially just referred to minutes from a previous council meeting and kind of left it wide open. It'd probably be either a thing of referring to the advisory committee language from a state statute or something like that, and see if any of the rest of it needs upgraded here to 2017. I don't know if these impact fee coefficients still apply. But anyway, this is what they would be doing or would be tasked with doing. And the question basically is, and Randy, I asked you to look into this. I think we have to look at creating an impact advisory committee, correct?
That's correct, Mayor, and your characterization, I independently reviewed the same things and pretty much came to the same conclusion. I really wanted to come to the conclusion that it would make sense to have P&Z cover that role as well, because people who are knowledgeable and interested are hard to come by and that are willing to participate. Yeah. So that it kind of makes sense to be able to have some of those folks, but your reading is correct. And in this instance, I don't think the state statute is well served to exclude folks like folks who are on P&Z and maybe Lodgers Board or other things like that from this committee, but it does. I agree with your interpretation of that, and therefore I think a board and advisory committee needs to be appointed like all regular other town committees.
Okay, I have a question. Then as soon as we appoint them, don't they fall under this Government Conduct Act?
Well, good point. But I think what it is, and that's why it really doesn't make sense.
They become officials and then,
Can't use them.
Yes, and so I don't think the intent of this ordinance was to apply to folks like P&Z, but now we have a broad definition of officials that is the best definition coming out of the Government Conduct Act. I didn't find anything that contradicted that, and so I think we need to follow that, but I don't think we need to terminate them once they become officials and then just keep doing that. I mean, it is what it is.
Talk about mixed signals.
Well, maybe the fact that our P&Z is now a paid position would make that more so than just an appointed group.
Yeah.
Well, it does under that definition. I just think that is not a correct result, because that's the type of people you're going to want on this advisory committee. But the advisory committee has to be a separately appointed folks who are not serving on another board.
And have to be from the development committee.
40%, yes.
Okay.
And you're talking about the talent pool. We're a small community.
Exactly. That's why it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for small communities, because there's only so many people who can fill these various positions that demand certain types of expertise.
Well, none of the people on our P and Z department are from the development committee, so.
Well, Mr. Woods, he works in real estate stuff for Blake's Lauterberger.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so, I mean, but you're faced with having to appoint a different committee.
Yeah. Juan, you were about to say something?
I say, well, once we appoint anyone under at least the umbrella of the town, they automatically qualify for per diem as well. So even though they're not getting paid a salary, if we send them to a training or something, they're eligible for per diem. So they still count as an employee or
Kind
official.
of a funny thing, but anyway, we have the ordinance that we have in hand. It probably needs tweaked and changed around that advisory committee. Let's get something that isn't so specific to a point in time that's already come and gone.
Right.
Let's get something that's a little easier to understand and easier to, so we don't have to revisit what are they or who are they or whatever. And we could, so amending this, in other words, we don't need to create an ordinance to create this committee. We've got it. We just need to clarify in today's terms what the advisory committee, who or what it'll be made up of, the percentages, stuff like that.
Yeah, and it would be pretty simple since we
Right.
can just follow state statute.
So then, like it says here, and we probably, would you set out some more, like it says, they'll meet at the direction of the council or from the committee itself in order to file an annual written report. So would we set out maybe when we amend this, like, I don't know, a quarterly schedule for them or something more often or less often?
Well, it makes sense to give them some guidelines so that you don't create a committee that never meets.
Right.
That you might have an annual report, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense just to go ahead and create it and then it doesn't actually exist. I mean, do they have, and I would, you guys decide what they need to do each year. Maybe it's just an annual meeting.
And that's what Councilor Abraham and I were talking about, but when you get looking at this, it does kind of assign them. It's got definitions and it sort of assigns stuff for them to do. Fire capital improvement plan, schedule of impact fees, this risk assignments. I guess that could be their first assignment, would be to look this thing over and see if it needs stuff updated in it. But it kind of lays out what they do as far as producing that fire impact fee.
Mr. Mayor, you're going to have an organizational get acquainted time, so I think you're going to need to request that they meet relatively often for a while.
Yeah, so they can get their feet wet.
Right, because, so even if it said an annual report, and that you meet at least so many times a year, or more as needed.
That's what it says, that meet at the direction of the council or from the committee itself. I don't know if we need to flesh that out to something a little more specific or just leave it to them. But I think you would want to probably put a date in there, probably like coming into fall, that you would expect a report from them. Because that's their main thing, is to issue that report. And right now, it's just fire impact fees. If you did go further afield with other types of impact fees, you'd expect a report on all of them.
And when we want that, by the time we're going to do like our ICIP, or the county does their ICIP?
Could be
or does it
something
have
like that.
thing? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the deadline for that report would need to be in time for
Since
whatever
ICIP is
is.
usually about August, you'd want it probably in July.
Mhm.
So that's kind of stuff we need to sort of figure out. But I think that's probably something you want to put in there, that you would expect an annual report from that committee at some sort of given time. That report we produced, like I said, it basically that comes down to the recommendation, do you do anything to change it? And on the fire impact, we're in that agreement, we stick with whatever the county has or more. And like you said, well, if you determine they're not doing anything with it, can you quit it? So that's something they could look at as well, but I don't know if we can pull out of not charging anything under our agreement with the county. But anyway, take those and look at them. You've got the state statute in that, and like I said, I think we have what we need here, and it probably is going to need updated, especially that on the, we need to clarify that a whole lot on the advisory committee. And then if we can figure out somebody that doesn't violate the Governmental Conduct Act and is willing to serve, they could then be appointed to it.
Would we then need to clarify if they have to be town of Edgewood residents, county
Right.
residents, within the?
Gonna have to figure that kind of stuff out.
And the, generally, I looked and I didn't see anything, but that, I looked online, which is a limited amount of Edgewood's ordinances, but I didn't see anything that outlined general requirements for board members for Edgewood. That's where you'd usually find that, and people usually either do specifically require them to be residents, or in some instances, it doesn't matter if they're, as long as they have the expertise, you can say whatever you want, but there's no requirement unless you set it out.
They did in that ordinance on the planning and zoning.
Yes.
They changed it to where 2 of the members could be from outside the town boundaries. So that would be one to look at, to consider, but essentially, I think it comes down to, we're looking at creating another committee and putting it together intelligently so it'll last out through the years and nobody else will have to stumble onto it like this and try to figure out. And like I say, that 2009, 2004, we hunted everything we could over there, computer files. It's just not in there. Counselor Simmons and Abrams, you were on there back then. You might check if you got any old files or something, but I don't know that we need it.
How about the old minutes? Would there be?
The minutes are around it, show it.
I probably have.
And there's not something attached to it, maybe?
No, but the minutes around it, that we have.
I have to go through many bankers' boxes.
But anyway, I don't know that we have to have it so much unless it would be a thing of rescinding it to replace it with something different, but we've already got the ordinance that sets it up. So I think if we just fix the ordinance to reflect how we, like you said, the questions of who, where, when, set some terms or something, kind of like P and Z. 3 of them 2 years or something, 2 of them 1 year, so they stagger and change out. And then we'll see if we can find somebody to fill it out and give them something to do. But we do need to get that in. The last one was done there in 2010, and it's long overdue for an update. That's fire impact fee. I have another question that's come to me. This is a different topic a little bit. Does anybody here know how or why the speed limit over on Old 66 got dropped to 35?
When?
Well, it's been over there for a while.
Oh, here in town?
Yeah.
It had to do with how often we need turn-ins, curb cuts or something
There's
like
too many
that.
turn-ins that had to be lowered for that.
That was my recollection as well.
Was there a study done or something of it?
I think DOT did it.
Oh, DOT did it? Okay. Because we've had a lot of complaints about certain of our boys in blue working that section over something hard.
Just tell them to move down the road.
There is a very interesting place when you top the hill on Old 66 coming into town where you go from 55 down to 35 in a couple hundred yards maybe or less.
Yeah.
You get a 45 briefly.
You might want to request DOT put a sign up there that says, the yellow sign that says 35 ahead.
Yeah, because it switches pretty fast.
It
People
really
are
does.
getting caught in it, and it's like, when did you change all this?
It doesn't sound like much, 20 miles an hour, but it's a lot.
So council, this last item I have is, we've got our letter from DFA approving our 2018 fiscal year budget. This is a big deal. In the last 2 years, beginning in 2015 under my predecessor and continuing last year under me, we got these same letters. It came with a warning at the bottom that would say, due to estimated expenditures and transfers exceeding estimated revenue, the general fund cash balance is being depleted. Careful monitoring and aggressive revenue collections is recommended to avoid financial problems in the future. This year, we did not get that. This year, we're basically back in black, to quote AC/DC. I don't know if we'll stay there. My hope is that we will. Going back to my election, this was an issue of mine that bothered me, these things like this. And I understand how stuff works a little better now, that you can get into that without really wanting to go there. But anyway, I do want to thank council. I know you've taken some tough decisions and votes to correct some of these issues. I want to thank Mr. Torres for your work on all of this. You've been a godsend as far as I'm concerned, looking over the budget. You've put us on to different stuff we've done, and that's, like I say, that's resulted in some votes here that I'm not sure everybody's real happy with, but I can tell people that when we go up and see the New Mexico Finance Authority and stuff like that, they know about this. They also know about our audit findings, and we hear about it from them. And this is a lot of help for when you go up to see those people. When you make an effort to fend for yourself, they appreciate that. I remember back in 2003 or 4, at that time the town had hired, some of you may remember him, Les Houston, as a lobbyist up there. And he came in and told them here at that podium one night, he says, you know, y'all are going to have to be looking at doing stuff on the revenue side, because when you go up and see the legislature and that, they want to know, what are you doing for yourself? And if you tell them, well, we're not doing anything like that, they look to the next guy in line and see what he does. So I cannot stress enough that this is a big deal. Not having that little paragraph down there is an accomplishment, and we should all be justifiably proud of it. That is the last I have.
Mayor, before you move on, I didn't have my own little slot on the agenda, and I'm not gonna add anything. I just wanted to pass out one of your ordinances that I found that helps explain the issue of how to deal with conflicts of interest on this body. It was an ethics ordinance passed by the town after the Government Conduct Act. Let me see the date again. Just after it was passed. So it does outline the process and the different ways that conflicts of interest come up. And so it might be appropriate to all take a look at it and maybe put it on a future agenda for discussion.
Okay.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yep.
Sure. 2012, yeah.
And this ordinance says that official is any member of a board.
Yes.
Appointed officials, yep. So there it comes up again. And this being 2012-01, it would have come in after that Governmental Conduct Act.
Right, and it's pretty self-explanatory. The main thing is it follows the Government Conduct Act in the sense that most conflicts are related to financial interests, and that's when it comes up the most often, and it walks everybody through that. So it's helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Audio. Next item on there is matters from the councilors. Councilor Holly.
All right, I will be working the polls on September 19th, so I thought this would be a good opportunity to remind everyone that there is a special election on September 19th. It's a Santa Fe County special election, and there's only one question on the ballot. And that will be giving the voters an opportunity to decide on increasing the county's gross receipts tax by 1/16%. And they want to do that to provide additional funding for public safety and behavioral health services. So just wanted to tell you about that opportunity to get out there and vote. Early voting has already begun, and you can vote currently at our Edgewood Fire Station, and their hours are Tuesday through Friday, 12 to 8, and Saturdays, 10 to 6. And then on Election Day, polls will be open at the South Mountain Elementary School and also at Edgewood Elementary School from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And this time around, they're calling them voter convenience centers. So you don't have to worry about going to where you think your precinct is. You can go to any voting location. And one other thing I kind of wanted to do in honor of our former Councilor Ring, he loved the Constitution, and Constitution Day will be September 17th, and that just commemorates the formation and signing of the U.S. Constitution back in 1787, so it's 230 years old this year.
Wow.
That's all I have.
Councilor Abraham.
I want to say we did go to the urgent care center. It's going to be awesome and amazing. They're talking about, building an extreme facility with a helipad and all kinds of things, so you guys just hang on. But anyway, the other thing I wanted to talk about was the art in public places. It does look like all the temporary art are going to become permanent. We're working on a few small details with some of the artists to make the transition. The other thing is 9/11 is coming up. If any of you have ever been to the White Wings over America, over at Wildlife West, it's just a beautiful ceremony. They release doves. They have speakers. One of the guest speakers is a guy that was in New York during and after the attack. So it's very personal to him. And it's at 10 o'clock on Monday, September the 11th. It's a free event, and it's just really nice to go and remember. And that's all I have.
Councilor Simmons.
I just wanted to ask Councilor Holly, the current tax rate in Santa Fe County is what, and what will the 1/16 bring it to? Do you happen to know? And if you don't, that's okay.
Just a minute. Does it matter if you're in Santa Fe or out of
Well,
Santa Fe?
According to a newspaper report, it says the 1/8 increase will move the rate within the Santa Fe city limits to 8.4375%, and in the unincorporated county territory to 7.125.
That doesn't apply to us because we have our own.
Okay. So we're not going to have, well, if
It would be on top.
It would increase ours.
It would increase ours.
Yeah, and ours
Okay.
is.
So it would increase us to what?
Actually, it comes in and bumps us up. So what is ours now?
8.0625.
I think 8.0, yeah.
So it would bump us up to be what, 8.12?
Something about like that.
Thank you.
But it is a voting thing. You can go up there however you decide to vote on it.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I guess, I thought that ribbon cutting was just wonderful. And it's nice to see some enthusiasm in the town. And I was talking to a lady today, and she said she wanted me to be sure and express her gratitude for how hard staff works at keeping the weeds down in Edgewood and how clean Edgewood's looking. And I thought, that's great,
I did up so many weeds and filled the back of my car because I figured it was just a good morning.
Speaking of that picture, if you still got it down there, wherever it's at. The Independent.
The what?
Didn't I send it
Oh,
down
the
that way?
independent newspaper?
Oh, yeah.
The newspaper.
So, in that picture, one of the people present this woman here in the pink dress, she was the first ever female graduate from the UNM School of Medicine.
Effie Medford.
Yes. She works there for New Mexico Medical, and a little bit of history there in the making. Counselor Abrams.
I think I'm going to pass tonight.
Okay. That brings us to the next item, matters from clerk treasurer. Mr. Torres.
Mayor, council, just wanted to let you know we might be having to bring a resolution for the Social Security back to council to request a new deadline. I have submitted everything to the Social Security Administration and have yet to hear back from them. So we cannot issue our 90-day referendum until we hear from them. So that might be coming in the not too distant future. And that's all. That is all I have.
Okay. Next item then is action items, public hearing. We got two tonight, the zoning ordinance, some changes, and the subdivision, some cleanup on that one. Let me go ahead and end the public hearing here.
Mayor, I do have one comment. When you give us things like this, can you tell us what it goes with?
Yeah, that one there goes with the subdivision ordinance. First, request certification that public notice of this hearing at 2 consecutive regular meetings of the government body has been posted as required. Michelle? It's been publicly noticed?
Yes.
This is a legislative public hearing called for the purpose of adopting changes and amendments to the zoning ordinance and making other changes. Requirements for a legislative procedure differ from quasi-judicial procedures in several important respects. Members of the governing body may conduct their own research into the proposed ordinance, may consult with members of the public outside the meeting, and may advocate for personal opinions and/or those of constituents. I'll ask for confirmation by members of the governing body that they have no pending land use applications which might benefit from the proposed changes to the ordinance. Starting on this end with me, Mayor, I have no conflicts of interest or anything, and certainly no pending applications of any land use kind. Councilor Holly?
I have no pending land use applications.
Councilor Abraham?
I have no pending land use applications.
Councilor Simmons?
I have no pending land use applications.
Councilor Abrams?
No pending land use application.
The concern is that this hearing be fair in form and substance, and to that end, all public input and governing body deliberations will primarily consist of remarks about the proposed changes. Furthermore, all discussions, both for and against the proposal, will be offered in a positive manner, which is consistent with the governing body of the town of Edgewood's adopted resolution for conducting business. All persons wishing to give public input concerning the provisions of the ordinance offered for adoption on tonight's agenda are not required to be sworn in, since the adoption of an ordinance is a legislative matter and does not rise to the higher standards of quasi-judicial hearing. For those of you wishing to give input, your input will be allowed. We may put a time limit on it, but not necessarily, unless the governing body asks questions or otherwise extends your time by approval of the mayor or majority of the governing body. So Michelle, go ahead and take us, give us a little bit of a staff report on what you've got here tonight.
Okay, well, we thought we had a presentation to do here on the computer, but we're having issues. So I believe you each had a copy printed out for you that is in a more correct manner. Basically, what we did is we went through and took all of the prohibited uses and conditions that we had stipulated underneath each.
We're doing subdivision ordinance first?
No, first is the zoning
No,
ordinance.
it's the zoning.
It's
Well,
number
mine is
8.
marked
6A. Mine too.
Mine says zoning ordinance.
Mine says zoning.
Yeah, but the tab says
The little
6A.
tab versus 6A.
Oh.
So they're swapped.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the red tab, not the blue tab.
I'm not sure what color you have.
No,
It should say
it's the
zoning.
tab, but it should be the 6 packet, not the one on the page.
Okay. All right.
So basically, all of the zones through our residentials that had stipulations or prohibited uses, we have gone through and given it a more defined clearing or a clear read. And we have done that underneath Section 9 is going to be the first changes that we come to. Under Section 9, the zone district boundaries, it's going to be Section 9C, 1, 2, and 3. And you should see it all marked in red there. It's going to be on page 16.
And so basically, what you're telling us is you've condensed all of those prohibited into here and added a few things?
Right. What we did is actually, it is more defined here than what it had been. If you turn to, like even on R1, which is going to be on page 20, the prohibited uses was left very open, very vague, and it says the following uses are prohibited in this zone. Number 1, the open storage of an inoperative motor vehicle or auto parts. Number 2, the open storage of trash or junk. Number 3, the open storage of appliances. And number 4, any use not designated a permissive or conditional use in this zone unless otherwise authorized by this ordinance. That was the only thing listed under each and every one of our zones for residentials. Right. So it left it very vague. Basically, if your car breaks down, I can cite you for having an inoperative vehicle. That could be, that could work on our side, but it's not very friendly for our residents. So I think we needed a definite plan on exactly what each part of this meant. So back on page 16, this is going to stipulate through all of it. So what we did is underneath each residential zone, under the D prohibited uses, we put a line basically, as you see prohibited uses, section 9C, 1, 2, and 3. And then it goes into a more definite, or definition, I guess.
So we've got uses, then nuisances, and then the clean fill material.
Yes.
I have a comment about under nuisances. I really think we need to remove the part that says unmaintained plants and or weeds. Because, like I told the mayor this morning, my garden could be considered an unmaintained plant. I mean, I planted it, they all died, the grasshoppers ate it, it looks bad, but it's in my backyard.
Well, and I think that comes to reason. That's going to be in your backyard. It's not going to be a fire hazard up next to your house that's grown to be 6 feet tall, that's dried and now is a fire hazard. It's not going to become a new home for the rodents and the snakes. And it's not going to be an eyesore for your next door neighbor that's trying to sell their property.
But I think the fact that we have huge fields in the middle of our town says we're kind of okay with unmaintained plants.
Well, agriculture falls underneath a whole different ordinance. It doesn't fall underneath the same ordinance. It's not held to the same thing. Most farmers are not going to let weeds take over their field. So I don't think you're going to have that problem. Crops are cherished by the farmers. They're going to take care of their stuff. The weed control, I found a saying here, or not a saying, but a statement made by one of the local towns in New Mexico. The question has arisen from time to time, especially during summertime of the year, why worry about controlling the weeds? Certainly with the monsoon season upon us, the weeds appear to be taking over the spare piece of dirt and even the area's vegetation already growing. Some of the larger problems with the additional weed growth consist of increased allergies, more camouflage for rodents, snakes, insects, also to include mosquitoes, and of course, simply unsightly. Additionally, the weed growth will reduce the area for native vegetation to grow, including that the lawn you've paid good money for to water, cultivate, and maintain.
Not only that, but I mean, if you look at a lot of the other ordinances, I mean, they actually have, it cannot grow over 2 feet. It cannot, you know, all these different stipulations because it is a fire hazard. And technically, we have an ordinance in place now for Edgewood, but that is for our residents, or not for our residents. It's held to businesses and any development moving into our communities. Now, why would we hold developmental communities that's bringing in residents to a standard that we're not going to uphold with the rest of our residents?
Well, I think business is always held to stricter standards than residents are.
I think it depends on what we want our town to look like. I mean,
I just think this is going to be a nightmare to enforce.
possibly, but I also think that a lot of people, it's going to be more of a common sense type thing. If they're letting their weeds grow and it's a financial burden or something, I have a lot of resources already set up that will come in and mow their lawn for free. They can mow the weeds and stuff.
Abandoned properties and vacant
Absolutely.
lots.
I'm already working with several of the management groups that are managing these properties that are abandoned or foreclosed and stuff, and I make them come in once a month and mow it down. And I do that off of the business one that we're using. But I think if we're going to hold other residential groups, because the development's coming in, then I think we need to hold them all.
And this isn't going to be cost prohibitive to the town?
I think in the long run it will, but especially in your residential areas, when you have houses up for sale. You have no idea how many phone calls I get. Can you make my neighbor clean up their yard? Can you make them mow those weeds so I can sell my house and get out of here? Things
Well,
don't sell when it's like this.
The other thing here, this is the unmaintained plants and/or weeds. That's part of a long list of stuff. I've been pondering on that since this morning, Councilor Abraham. If it was standalone, just unmaintained plants and/or weeds, it might stick out like that, but when you go out there, you're not going to look at just the weeds or just the junk or just the cars. You kind of look at everything or what the complaint's been about.
Absolutely. I mean, there's some properties that I don't even want to walk in because I can't tell what I'm going to be stepping on.
Yeah.
That's a health issue. That is a safety issue for law enforcement, medical, fire, code enforcement. Anybody who walks onto this property and you're stepping in, 3 feet of weeds and trash and junk, and you don't know if there's a snake under there, you don't know what's there.
So is this under the heading of better to have it and not need it than not have it and need it? I mean, if we
One way
didn't
to
have
look at
that, could you do something about tall weeds or something if they prove to be a problem?
I don't know how we would cover it. I mean, it would definitely be something that they could appeal.
Well, like you said,
I mean, I could try to work it in one way or another, but without something there
Yeah.
other than with the developmental groups or a business, I don't know how that would be enforced. We have to have something, and that's why I say, I mean, we left it very vague. We don't have to go in with measuring tapes. We can make it stricter if we'd like. If you want to say, if it grows to be over 5 foot, then I can go enforce. I mean, that's your choice. We left it like this where it's more of a common sense. Excuse me. I can write out a general letter or a courtesy notice, stipulating the health hazards of the tall weeds and stuff like that and our concerns, and to please mow them down. Same way we do with the trash and the junk and stuff like that. It comes down to the same thing. It depends on what we want our town to look like. If we want to say that it's okay for them to have 10-foot weeds and their whole yard is covered in them, then why can't they have the vehicles? Because you're not going to be able to see the vehicles because of the weeds.
Now, they make
So
money
why
on-
are we doing code enforcement?
They make money on those weeds in Colorado.
Well, then I say sell them to the Colorado people because we don't want them here.
Mayor?
Go ahead.
And Counselor, I think how this gets regulated, because you can, I've seen ordinances that will be pages long of how you define what a weed is and what are weeds, and there's a list, and it gets really in-depth. I think the key is that if, I think Michelle has a pretty good head on what is a nuisance and what isn't. Let's say when she's gone and there's somebody else there and they happen to be real zealous, the way it gets, pardon the pun, weeded out is if you bring a complaint in front of a judge that is junk, there's a picture of a yard that has some flowers, sunflowers, let's say, too tall. it's going to get tossed, and the judge is going to be very angry with them. So, I mean, it's going to kind of be self-correcting, and then you guys will also get complaints, and then you can correct the zoning inspector, because I just don't, I mean, so in other words, there are options. You can define it very clearly what is talked about, but it can get very...
The other one that occurs to me is if you have them growing like by a stop sign or something maybe, or something growing on your property's blocking a view or something.
Absolutely.
If you didn't
Or
have
even
something
over a
that could-
pothole, and then the cars are getting damaged or anything to that effect as well. So then, of course, there's lawsuits that can happen from the road damaging. There's a lot of things that can happen.
I just think it's going to be really hard to mandate mowing around here.
I'm not sure that's where it's headed, but
I think that's exactly where it's headed.
Well, I can assure you, I'm not going to drive up and down everybody's street and just start writing down addresses to cite them because they're weeds. I don't like their weeds, or they haven't mowed. That's not what this is about. This is about like the abandoned houses, and the weeds have taken over, and you can't see where you're walking, and you can't see the vehicles that's parked underneath there, and people are, if the officers are chasing somebody, they're hiding in the weeds. That's putting their lives at danger, and this happens on an everyday basis. I mean, this is not something, trust me, I have plenty of other complaints on my desk that I'm going to be enforcing before I ever go out on weed patrol. That's not just going to happen.
Well, that's kind of my point. Is this in there just for redundancy?
well, in other words, one of the reasons the weeds get big and tall is they've got inoperative vehicles, so they can't get in around there, and the weeds grow up between them.
Well, then you could get them for inoperable vehicles.
Tell them while they're at it, clean up those weeds.
Because when they go to move those vehicles, that's another fire hazard at that point. We live in a drought, the weeds, they dry up, they crumble up, they are a fire hazard. I mean...
They burn really good.
Right, exactly. And so if they're up next to your house or anything else, or your neighbor's house and your neighbor's house, your neighbor's goes up from the weeds catching on fire, yours is liable to go too.
Tell us what else is new in this part here.
What else is what?
New?
Basically, it's just going to be more of the definition of anything. As far as the nuisance, of course, we're back on the whole trash and everything else. All enlisted before was storage in an open, there was no open storage of trash or junk. So it is more explicit here that it actually has to be, let me get to the right section here. Be kept in an enclosed storage. All outdoor storage and/or trash collectible areas shall be covered and be visibly screened from the property lines and solid wall or fence, or by evergreen hedges at least 6 foot high.
That's basically screening.
Exactly. As far as the vehicles, instead of just saying that if you have an inoperative vehicle, you're in violation, this comes down to all vehicles within the zone districts must be registered vehicles. They must be up on inflated tires and not used as a storage container for like the trash. All inoperative vehicles must be receiving active attention to operation and restoration. As far as the clean fill matter, any person who accepts the stockpiles or uses clean fill matter shall, and this came from the state environmental, and that's just because we had that case when I first started, and we had nothing, and the environmental said, well, we'll come in and we'll cite your people then. So I talked to them at lengths. They gave me the opportunity to work with our residents here and our businesses and residents. And basically what the clean fill matter is just the definition of exactly that of what the environmental enforces.
I did come across one other change that needs to be made earlier in this. And it is on page 12. It states that compensation of mentors for planning and zoning commissioners shall serve without compensation. We need to change that.
Catch.
This is all about enforcement today, is what changes we have made. We're fixing to start trying to figure out and weed through exactly what needs to be changed and what we need to look at and stuff like that. So yes, there are several of them that we want to address coming up shortly. But yes, that does need to change just because we've already made that stipulation.
So take us on back to some of them other changes you got.
So basically, all of them are going to be the same until we get down towards the bottom, which is going to be Section 32 Performances Standards in all districts, page 50. So this is where we're starting. What we've decided to do is we are creating a section of just enforcement, penalties, and all of that in one area instead of it being spread out over a total of 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there was 6 different areas that had it. Some of them kind of contradicted each other, so what you will be seeing is, so on page 50, underneath the performance standard districts, there is an existing violation that has been marked out. It won't be replaced right there, but it will be used towards the back in this other section. The next one is going to be on page 52. And that's going to be underneath the WEX, the conditional use permit, and it's going to be basically the same thing where, if I get to it here, on page 55, under G and H, is administration and enforcement, and then penalties, which has also been marked out, and that will be in the enforcement and penalties section here later on.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Let's see, the clean fill on 16, clean fill material. And I went over the definitions to make sure what clean fill means. I have an idea of what clean fill means. I would think it's sand or gravel.
It can be sand, gravel, cement, anything of a natural type thing that you have been using. In fact, I believe it's stipulated here.
So you're saying get a clean fill definition in there?
I think so.
And actually, we had one, but I don't think any of the definitions have been addressed. It is listed in the definitions on, but I don't think I have that copy with me. I just have the one that we've fixed here.
Okay. Then,
but underneath the definitions, there is one to be addressed in there, and it is listed.
And when you run into situations where the homeowner is elderly or infirm, how do you address the weed situation there?
As far as the weeds, like I said, I have several resources already in place that has come out and have helped several of our residents that either physically cannot do this, monetary cannot afford to do it, and have cleaned up their yards for free. I've used some community service people, and we'll go out and watch them and let them clean it up for free. We have several things in place already, and we have used them on several different occasions at this time.
Yeah, that would be interesting to learn more about that.
Okay.
Not tonight.
Right. So if we go on to page, let's see, I think I might have jumped ahead.
Hang on a second. We'll give you an opportunity to speak.
So as I said, on 55, underneath the WEX, the administration and enforcement in the penalty section has been crossed out there and will be moved to the back as well. Same thing on page 57, our whole section of nuisance is going to be stipulated in the back. And then on section 38, administration, has been changed to administration and enforcement. The first part, A, B, C, D, has all been stricken. And then if you turn the page and starting on 60 is the actual new section that has been implemented. And as you can see, we start with A, planning and zoning official, the information and records kept, C, enforcement and powers of duty, and that goes all the way through to D, violations and penalties, to where we have this all in one area. And then, of course, the next section being 38, alternative remedy for more serious nuisance, which goes back to our resolution on condemnation and that sort of thing, abandonment and all of that. The other place that the penalties has been removed is from section 41 in administrative fees, because as you see over on this other new section that we put in, the violations and penalties are all listed right there. And that's for the entire ordinance is listed there.
And the last one is on the back page.
Yes,
Corrections.
the last part is the correction stipulation that we utilize that the town clerk and treasurer of all the ordinances are authorized to make the necessary clerical correction without the ordinance having to be amended.
So what we're looking at then is relocation of stuff.
For the most part, yes,
Try to
it's more of a
consolidate it toward the
definition
back.
and then just brought in to be where it actually flows together.
Randy, did you have a hand in that?
I helped a
Mr.
little
Audio,
bit.
you wanted to kind of condense it back into one section here?
Mayor, what I, as Michelle and I worked on it along with some others too, and what I realized is that this was one of those ordinances that different parts had been enacted at different times, and different enforcement sections were included at that time, and they weren't necessarily consistent. And then the nuisance section where it was located, that allows you to do the resolution and then actually clean and lien the property, was in a spot that had absolutely nothing to do with anything else. It was with variances and conditional uses. So it just made a lot of sense to put all that in one place so that when you're reading it, you can see everything that is stated about it. And there weren't, Michelle added some changes in language just to clarify what her duties and responsibilities are where they weren't clearly stated. But overall, all this follows state statute as to what your authority is. It doesn't increase her authority over and above what state statute allows. It's just kind of a nice, stated in a more readable and consistent way.
I have a question on page 60, under enforcement and powers and duties. There's two section A's there. The section A I'm concerned about says if appropriate resources are available, conduct periodic inspections of buildings, structures, and the use of land to confirm compliance with this ordinance or any permits issued hereunder. This provision does not grant right of entry without due process if necessary. So are we saying we want to just randomly go out and inspect things because we don't have anything better to do?
Absolutely not.
Counselor, what it allows for is, an example would be if a zoning inspector is driving down the street. I mean, primarily what all agencies in New Mexico do is they respond to complaints.
Right,
Because
and
we
that's
don't.
section B.
Yes, we don't have the manpower to do otherwise. But what A allows is if they drive down the street and there's a dangerous or significant infraction there, they don't have to ignore it. They can enforce on it if they wish to. So it is normal enforcement officer authority. I think that it's what authority they'd have anyway, but it just kind of clarifies that yes, in fact, so it isn't a defense to someone who is in violation that it wasn't prompted by a separate complaint.
I have a big issue with a misspelled word on line A.
A of which page?
Page 60, enforcement and powers and
Conduct?
duties. Yeah. That's all. 2 Cs.
Where are we at?
Second A, first line, conduct.
Oh.
And with all these changes, Counselor Abraham, that you pointed out, there is some relettering that's going to happen to make it consistent with the rest of the code.
Right.
We ran into that with them last week there. They were, something they did with a Word file, we couldn't edit anything on it. And it was coming up on Labor Day weekend, you couldn't find anybody down there, and it's like, well, okay, here it is. But yeah, there's gonna have to be some, where we can get in and change
It
some of
still
this
needs a
stuff.
lot of little
Yeah.
tweaking as far as the formatting and stuff like that, because like you said, we were not able to reformat it after some of the changes were implemented. We couldn't even use a spell check on it. We couldn't
Yeah.
implement anything on this so basically all we could do is just copy and paste the way it was and make a new, just to get it out and where it was readable without 15 different colors and you guys trying to decipher what's what.
Well, it just happened to jump out at me, and I don't mean to be a tempest in a teapot.
And then on page 62, appeal to district court. Number 1 says giving notice of appeal to the mayor within 5 days. What is the purpose of?
That was just like in the resolution is the same, it's that same exact thing. That's actually a copy. That's our resolution. That's exactly how it is worded.
That's what it's got
That
in
is
there
what
now.
is written right now. The only
I
difference
wondered
in
about
this
that.
one here is it just got moved.
Yeah, it probably didn't need to be there. I mean, it's nice to have notice of those things, but the legal significance is filing in district court.
Yeah. So I was just wondering if maybe we could just change that, so the appeal
Some of
isn't to
you
the
guys-
mayor in case he's not there, but to the town administration offices or some.
Some of you guys that were here earlier worked on this. Why did they make it like that, I wonder? I mean, all them other appeals, you just come in and file the paperwork with the
Yeah, with the
clerk.
town.
And they have the 15 days to even let the courts know or whatever. And actually, they don't even let our courts know. They just do the paperwork in time, and the district court is what contacts municipal. So it doesn't make any difference.
Well, it's a little weird too, because in other
Right.
words, it says any person aggrieved by the determination may appeal to the district court by, like, is it one or the other? Giving notice of appeal to the mayor within 5 days? They're still gonna have to go to district court.
We
and
need to,
file.
Right.
we need to fix it.
Yeah.
It's awkward.
But yeah, that one is just a copy over. We didn't mess with it at all. We just put it into the enforcement side of it where it just kind of flows, where it's actually section by section, they're gonna get a courtesy
But
notice.
again,
They're gonna
this was
get a
just
citation.
existing verbiage. You haven't
Yes.
changed anything
No,
on that. And
that has not
I seen
changed.
that when we had that Cavaney one come through, and I thought, what is
Right.
that about? I mean,
And then the other thing is on number 3, where it says the mayor or the mayor designate shall determine to method to be used to remove the property nuisance. I think, didn't we, the last one, have that brought to the governing body?
yeah.
I think
In fact, that's,
both of those need to be governing body, that
That,
one, and number G as well.
wherever it goes back here, it starts, you remember, with that resolution by council. That was a funny thing. It starts with that, then it dumps it off to stuff like that of go to the mayor, and I'm like, well,
Yeah, I think
Well,
that should.
Mayor,
just be
council,
replaced.
so on that part, so are you saying that we're going to have to bring it back to council to determine the method on which we're going to remove the nuisance?
I think yes. I would prefer that.
I don't think so.
Well, the-
If we've already decided to remove it by action of council, we've decided to remove it. We need to decide the method.
Well, this is talking about the cost of the removal.
Well, if
I
we've
mean,
decided to remove it, we've decided to accept the cost.
And just for example, and the reason I was bringing this up is, let's just say let's go ahead and remove it, and the company we contract with to remove it gets in there, and then they find asbestos or something, and now we've got this huge abatement cost. Well, we've already made the decision to remove it. Do we want to then come back to council and say, well, we found this asbestos, so do you want to remove it? But we kind of have to now, because now we have found that health, safety issue
Well,
on
and
top of it.
That's true, but council may want to do something to work with that cost.
See, it starts up here at B, declaration by council of nuisance. It starts right off with council, and then devolves back down to like that E one there.
Well,
Mr.
and
Mayor, if I may, I'll go back to what I said before. The council is making the decision to do the abatement. If the council is making the decision to do the abatement, the council is aware of the cost. If we've accepted the cost and have decided to proceed with the abatement, the method by which it's done is no longer a concern. We've already made a decision. It's within the mayor's purview to assign a designee to conduct whatever is necessary. If there is a change, I would assume that a change would come back and say there has been a change in cost or something like that. But beyond that, I don't care who does the abatement, if I know how much it's going to cost.
But what if you don't know how much it's going to cost?
Well, then it shouldn't be approved by council, should it?
It has been approved already, the one we're talking about, and there may be asbestos.
Yep.
So
Well,
now
but we
things
are
may
aware that
change.
there may be asbestos.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Randy, if we have condemned this place, aren't we liable until this place is actually taken down?
Correct.
Because we're the ones who have put the tape up and condemned it from being entered by the residents or anybody else.
Well,
So
and-
technically, the town has some type of responsibility there, correct?
with the whole action, I think the most functional thing is to give as much of an estimate as you can up front, given that it may not be, you may run into things. And I think that the budget needs to be set in the sense that this is the amount of money we have in our budget that can pay for this cleanup. And if it's suddenly going to be triple that, then you're going to have to bring it back.
Oh, yeah.
Because there may be a change in what direction we're going to do. But Michelle's right in the sense that once we take this action, it is within our control, and we have the duty to.
The only thing, this is kind of like that committee thing, so if it's triple or whatever, then you come back and say, well, gee, I guess we can uncondemn it.
Can
you
you
uncondemn something?
Well, no, but
Yeah.
I think at that point, the public needs to be able to know what we're doing with their money. That's my whole point with all of these is if we're spending money to condemn properties and tear things down, and we start, and then it's gonna cost 4 times that, I think it needs to be made apparent in a public meeting that
That's
gonna
cool, but
cost
like I
4
say,
times more.
what would you do? I mean, what would be the practical thing to do if you decided it was too much?
Can you uncondemn a property?
Excuse me?
Can you uncondemn a property?
Well, it wouldn't be that. You would take then measures to secure the property and make it safe. You may not then be able to, but I think the key is who has what authority. Once the council has acted and says this is a nuisance and it needs to be taken care of, and then town officials can clean it and lean it. That's all that the council needs to do. But I think it is appropriate then to bring a report back.
Oh, yeah.
The mayor can report publicly what is occurring with that, but I don't think the council has to reallocate it as long as the budget's there. That's a different issue. It's a budgetary issue if you don't have the money to do
Yeah, I was going to ask about the
it.
budget, and then,
Yeah.
you never know when you're going to run into the leaking underground storage tank. It's called lust. And then there's super funds every now and again. There was an ammunitions manufacturer in the canyon. And then the city of Albuquerque is dealing with some huge issues, and they they cannot get a handle on it.
And that's the type of thing that I think it does come back when circumstances have changed completely beyond what was authorized.
Well, isn't there some kind of a procurement,
Well, there's procurement thresholds, I mean.
so that you have to get your three?
If the bids come in and they're a certain level, then it's like, okay, well, you know, we can no longer do this. We've actually sent out a formal invitation, and I think that's where Randy's exactly right. The budgetary constraints would become an issue.
Yeah, and then we get written up for making budget adjustments.
Yeah.
Those were the only concerns that I had reading through it.
And Counselor, I agree with you. I looked at that, I've looked at it several times while we were messing with Cavanagh and that, and it's like, I don't get what the intent was here other than, I guess they figured, like Counselor Abrams said, once the council acts to make it a nuisance, then you turn it over to administration to deal with it. I'm guessing how they intended this to go.
Is that how we still intend it to go?
I don't know.
Well, it follows state law. The states, this is pursuant to state statute in the process that state statute sets out.
That the mayor makes the decision?
On which part?
On
Number F.
the part we were just talking about?
On how it's done?
Yeah.
Yeah, the council's decision is, do we do this? And you give him the authority to accomplish the clean and lean. And again, I can see where there are instances where something occurs that exceeds what authority you gave him, the Superfund site, the extraordinary issue, that should come back. But it doesn't have to come back if it's within an estimate and it's within the clean and lean budget established by you earlier. You know, let's say you have an account and you put $100,000 in it annually saying, here's what we're using for clean and lean. And as long as you can accomplish it within budget, it's okay.
It does raise a question here on number F, cost of removal constitutes a lien. So you go down through there, and it's got, I guess, 3 different conditions under which the town may take corrective action.
Yeah,
Either
the
within-
removal salvage value is
Either
very
within 10
interesting.
days of being served a copy of the resolution or of the posting and publishing the resolution, provided no appeal is filed, or within 5 days of the determination of the town governing body that the resolution shall be enforced. Is that another separate action for the council? That they decide it'll be enforced?
I would have to look back at the statute
Yeah.
to answer that question. I don't know.
And then the other one's within 30 days after district court if they've filed an appeal. So in this one, they haven't filed an appeal, correct?
No.
Yeah, so it's
And
either
it's
on-
already, and he realizes that, he knows it's already past the time, he's not trying to appeal it or anything like
Yeah.
that.
The salvage value is kind of interesting because it says here, the owner pays for the cost of removal, building structure or housing by granting to the person, and that's legal entity, XYZ company, removing such structure, the legal title to all salvageable material in lieu of all other compensation, excuse me. That's very interesting.
And just to be clear, the action you're taking isn't actually a condemnation. The condemnation, it is authority to enter upon someone's property, clean it without their permission, and then put a lien on it for the payment. The town could choose to move to foreclose on the lien. If they don't pay the lien, the town could choose to foreclose on the lien, which could actually then result in a condemnation, basically, of the property. But what you do really isn't a condemnation. It's just authorizing extraordinary measures to clean and lean a property.
And one of the things that we've talked about, if we do that, the whole issue of fair market value and all that kind of stuff came up. Can you do sort of like how the mortgage companies do cash for keys?
I didn't hear the last part.
Like the Cash for Keys program that mortgage companies are doing? Can a governmental entity enter into some kind of contract like that with an individual? Or do we have to pay fair market value?
They give you the deed, basically, if you clean it up.
Generally, we're limited to fair market value of what we paid to do the cleaning. So if they don't pay and we have to foreclose to get paid, then we have to be paid for that amount. Or a reasonable settlement if they countersued or something, but generally fair market value.
Okay, that's all I have, so if there's any other questions, I leave it to y'all.
Council have any questions for Schmidt?
You know, I appreciate the amount of time it's taking to do this. And I remember your campaign promise, we weren't going to have a lawyer. And here we are, very much in need of a lawyer.
Mr. Seegers, do you have a question for Ms. Schmidt? Do you have any questions, though, for her? I'm just curious, while she's up there.
However you want to handle, on page 16, okay, we had made a bunch of comments to the planning commission, several letters we wrote, and I see that a lot of what we covered is incorporated. So I don't have nearly the objections that the business community had that we had previously.
Well, why don't you go up to the mic so we can get you on the...
And if I cover something you've already covered, I'm a little hard of hearing, and I missed a few things, okay? So just say, stop, we already covered that. But on page 16, one of the things that, I think the weed problem is a problem, okay, because we have a lot of native plants that some people regard as weeds, but I don't think that's terribly important to us. I do think that in the third paragraph, where you say all trash, debris, and this on page 16, garbage, litter must be kept in an enclosed storage, and I have no problem with that, but all outdoor storage, that's everything. Everything you store outside your house. And not, it's not just trash. It's outdoor storage and trash collection areas shall have covers. Does that mean I have to take my wood pile and cover it on four sides and put a lid on it? That's what it says, okay? And all that, my wood pile will have to be visually screened because it's part of outdoor storage. And I can build a wall around my wood pile or whatever I'm storing because we all keep a little lumber out there. We all keep a few things out here in the country, and I think we're opening ourselves up to some problems stating it this way. Or I can put an evergreen hedge at least 6 feet high. Has anybody ever seen an evergreen hedge in Edgewood 6 feet high? And how do you put a lid on it? So I think we need to clean that up a little and maybe get to the intent here and not open up a Pandora's box of problems.
You put a fence, and the crows, you put a fence, the crows will come and deposit the seeds of the juniper tree, and after a while, you've got a fence.
That's how that works, okay.
Mr. Sears,
Now.
can I ask a question? Where are we in the protocol? Are we asking, doing general comments about the ordinance or asking Ms. Schmidt a question? Mayor?
Okay, well,
If you open the floor to comment, I thought we were asking, this was questions for Ms. Schmidt.
I did ask him if he wanted to have any questions for...
well, I would think that if we scratched outdoor storage in this paragraph and kept it to the nuisance items, that we'd probably have a cleaner paragraph.
Sir, if I could, I will stipulate. All of that, what you're saying is correct, yes, but this is to do with the trash.
But it's
And
not
the
clear
garbage.
West Britain.
Okay.
We could switch it around so it's clearly only talking about trash. I don't know people that do a lot of outdoor storage of trash, but if that's what you really mean, a few words there might just clean it up. That's my suggestion, okay? The other thing is down in clean fill material, okay? I'm a little confused about what that is, and down at the bottom in paragraph D, that sentence needs to be cleaned up a little, and it says, we also have a definition for clean fill in the, comma, as provided herein. So I don't know what in the is, but I assume it's definitions. But I downloaded this today, and there is no definition of clean fill.
Yeah, we had that
We've already
conversation.
discussed that.
Pardon?
We just finished
Okay.
discussing that.
Yeah, and then I guess my question is, you know, what items are we talking about here? Is any of that like clean fill, that kind of stuff, or what do you call clean fill?
It's actually off of the environmental, the state of New Mexico environmental definition is where this law came from, and it is worded exactly as they have it. But yes, clean fill matter is going to be,
I'm deaf, I'm sorry.
I understand that, but I can only speak so loud. The clean fill matter definition and this law came from the state of New Mexico Environmental Department. All of it is on their website. That yes, construction matter, things that is going to, what is the right term? Sorry. Absorb within the ground and not be harmful to everybody. So it's going to be, can you help me out, Tom?
Ray, clean fill material is basically organic material. It could be
Thank you.
rubble, could be asphalt, it could be anything other than, say, chemicals combined.
Hey, John, we see a lot of this. This happens to be the kind of stuff I guess we're trying to do in. And if you look at that last picture, you'll see where it is. It's at the Public Works Department of the town. They're back in their building. Okay? And have been for 5 years. So if that's what we're trying to clean up, we're all for it. But if we do have a definition, that's fine. That's just one thing I thought was definitely missing here.
Okay.
Then over on, I thought it was very good that the town will now be mandated to keep records about amendments, building permits, because we keep losing things, like the page you mentioned we lost earlier in another subject. So as long as site development plans, approved variances, zoning appeals, zoning violations, I think that's a great idea. I'm glad you put it in there. Yeah, but you've seen the gaps in the past, and that's why it's a great idea. The other thing is, the item you discussed about the town moving in to clean up a nuisance, okay? And basically, you'll have the right to charge somebody or put a lien against their property for the cost of cleaning that up. I suggest that you put that out to bid and get bids. And I think the way the real world works, because I've seen Torrance County doing this, and they try to clean up a lot of things, and they've attempted to bill somebody for them cleaning it up, or threatened to. But when they came up with a figure, you'd be surprised how many people went out and said, I'm not going to pay that, and they got their brothers and their cousins and their horse trailers, and it all disappeared. So I think when you find a situation where you're going to take this move and you take it to this point, that you're going to cause it to be cleaned up, if you get competitive bids to do that, and town turns out to be the cheapest bidder and it doesn't matter to me. I mean, but I think it's much fairer, and you wouldn't be as open to liabilities and the stuff that goes on and gossip if you had 3 competitive bids, or 2, or, but real competitive bids, so you're not getting a finger pointed at the town and saying that was way too expensive. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Sears. Does anybody else have any questions for Ms. Schmidt? Go ahead.
Ms. Schmidt,
Ms. Turner, could you come up to the mic?
Ms. Schmidt, the copy I downloaded from the packet of the ordinance, I can't really read, so I wanted to revisit the WEX section. You said you did you moved the section on removing dilapidated or abandoned units. On the WEX, yeah.
Those penalties
And enforcement, yeah. The reason I'm asking is that when the WEX section was added to the zoning ordinance, believe it or not, it was one of the most controversial things the town ever did. Caused a lot of public comment. One of the biggest concerns people had is, okay, we do a permit to let these things be put up, but if someone moves off and leaves one and, you know, they're not maintaining it, they wanted to be sure that there was the mechanism.
Well, no, we still have
Right.
those things in place.
Right.
What it will say now is C-section, whatever the case is, and all enforcement and penalties on the backside where we put in the new
Right.
section.
But, okay, so when you're, but like in the WEX section, you are going to have a C-section, section, okay. The copy that,
And it may not have it in there right now, because at first I misread part of it, because that came back, but Randy said it's been going back and forth for weeks now. And I had misread part of it, so I had taken it to Carter and said, I think we have a mistake, and actually that was my mistake. So I probably did not get it put in there on that sentence. So
well,
was-
I know you're having format problems, and the reason I ask is I didn't see it in what's downloaded in the packet from the website.
Ms.
And I
Turner,
wanted to be sure of
the
that, yes.
section in the WEX on abandonment is still in there, still in place.
Okay.
Yes, no, the only part that was moved is the administration and enforcement and penalties. And then what it'll have is the C section.
Okay.
And I'll go ahead and write that in, and then that way everybody will have it.
And it
Yep.
still covers, if WEX are abandoned, the planning and zoning official may pursue legal action to have the wind generator removed at the owner's expense.
Well, I know that next to proximity to the property line, the big question is what happens if someone puts one up? Of course, we've had, what, 2? I think 2, and since then. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
at the end of this public hearing, could we have a 5-minute break?
Yeah. Does anybody else have any questions for Ms. Schmidt?
I have a statement actually for the town. In our pursuit to clean properties, which is a great endeavor, I would caution that we take into account for possibility of meth homes and such. A lot of rubble and weeds and everything else, you uncover that onion of debris, and boom, you've got a nasty situation that could harm your employees.
Right there.
Yes.
They went into that old house over there with the mold, and they got them sick. Okay, in that case, you want to make any changes or anything here tonight? Deletions, anything like that? We've discussed a number of additions, stuff like that.
Can we change on page 64 posting? There's that one little section that says at least one prominent place on or about each parcel. Can we take out the "or about"? Since it created that whole issue with the last one. It either needs to be on the property, properly displayed, or if there, it talks about if there are multiple properties down here.
Do you want to do that tonight, or you want to do that another night?
I was going to say, that's not part of what we're bringing forward tonight, but that is something that we can definitely address as part of these that we're bringing in here shortly. Because right now, tonight, all we were bringing in is the enforcement penalties and that type of thing. But yes, that is something that we're looking at because part of the conditionals, the conditional permitting and stuff like that is something else that we're going to bring in. So we definitely are starting.
Well, I agree with you. We need to tighten that up so we don't run into that situation they had.
But I'd kind of rather wait.
That's why I made a note here.
First and then come
Well, I
back
think
into the whole.
part of it, though, we have so many ordinances that don't work because we did this part here and this part here. Can we just like see this through and get the changes made before we move on to something else?
That's what we're hoping to do here. We don't have anything, this will come back on the 20th.
Okay.
If we could make our changes and stuff and then take them up that night,
Okay.
we'd probably get it approved before anything else comes in. I don't know if we've got something else lined up for the 20th to begin on this.
We have this lined up for the
Yeah. Essentially the second due of
Mayor and
this.
councilors, and I'll be happy to work with Michelle. I think the your point's well taken, but that's one of my pet peeves is making sure everything works. So I will keep bird dogging that so that we don't do something that interferes with something else.
So if that's all we've got tonight, I'll accept a motion to continue this on the 20th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to continue this public hearing on September 20th. All in favor, say aye.
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 So let's set that one aside. The next one then is the subdivision change.
Mr. Mayor, were you going to give me a 5-minute?
Oh, go ahead. We can do that. Yeah, that's right. We'll have to plow on without you. Let me get you functioning again. Reach in here. About here. About here. I can get you functioning again. My old back row buddy.
We just call it.
Oh, no. Oh, God.
Negotiate. That's serious business. I can't. Negotiate.
4 months ago. She was sitting in the car in traffic. Did not know how to surprise. The weird part is she can physically come to she can't talk. And then very slowly she started talking. That's why I did a letter. And the meds are first thing I put her the side effect was just like 20
Was she out there with the pups?
She's in the restroom now. She came in. She'll be out shortly.
Counselor, you're absolutely right about difficulty of enforcing some of those. But it's like, sometimes it's almost like it comes down to common sense. You don't mess with the little things and only focus on the big ones, but you're right. If you get the overzealous inspector,
Yeah, I just feel like, you know, we became a town because Santa Fe County was oppressive, and I just feel like sometimes we're more oppressive than Central County.
it's always a balance, because both sides have legitimate points, the neighbors and the property owners.
keep going back and forth, so I continue to make sure the stop. Everybody says, go for it. It's easy at the time.
Oh, that's funny. What is that cat doing there? Poor thing. That's funny. That's funny.
Ready to rock and roll? Let's get back in session and wrap this up. Somebody's got a thing to win tonight. Next item then is the public hearing subdivision ordinance legislative procedure. Tanya's up on this one. Got certification that this was publicly noticed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and give us a staff report just real quick on it.
This is real simple. We just needed to change the penalties to match what they previously were in the ordinance that was replaced. We just had the amounts wrong, so we're just correcting that, and it's been looked at by Mr. Audio as well.
And there was one finding in here that Randy found. It's in number 4 down there on the bottom. And that upon conviction, the owner or his agent shall pay a penalty of $500 for each lot transferred or sold or agreed or negotiated to be sold. Mr. Audio, you say in fact that needs to stay at 100.
Mayor, the state statute specifically calls out that amount of penalty, so it doesn't fall back to the general $500 penalty.
Right. So the only ones really that we're looking to change are in paragraph 1, 2, 3, and then the one on 4.
Stays the same.
Stays the same.
Stay the same?
Yes.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
were looking at bumping it up, but you said just leave it alone at the $100
Correct.
per state statute.
Correct. And the reason was this state statute was moved from the $300 maximum to the $500 a number of years ago, but between the time the last two subdivision ordinances were done. So this just is bringing it up to date.
I have a question. So on number 2, we're seriously going from $50 to $500 for not having your address posted?
That's what you all did in that previous ordinance.
Yes.
This
Can we
matched all
put-
them.
Can we put that back to a reasonable amount of money? I think $500 for having one of your numbers fall off is a bit excessive.
Well, that's the max for it. A fine not to exceed 500. It could be less than that.
You know, we're back to zealots.
Like I said, this was the changes that were in that previous ordinance.
Right,
Well,
but we can
Mayor,
change them at
Council,
this time, can't
if
we?
I may, wouldn't the fines be assessed by our judge, not the inspector?
Right.
Yes.
It will be within the judge's discretion to assign. We would bring the violation, and it's up to the judge to assign what the penalty is.
And this caps all of them, first 3 at $500.
Which is what the state statute says.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make them less, but then you're taking away the judge's discretion, which like, for example, in number 2, if a person was hiding their address from the public so that they couldn't be collected upon and so forth, then you might want to fine them more than if their number falls off.
And what about the town, as we have many, many streets that don't even have road names on them, so if you can't find them like that. I mean, you try Googling something out here and you don't know where you'll end up.
Just bring it to our attention what road is missing a sign and we'll get it fixed.
Okay.
Council have any other questions for Tanya? Does the public have any questions for Tanya? Go on up there.
Okay. My problem with paragraph 4 is it doesn't follow the nature that land is sold around here, the way it's sold. If you own a 5-acre tract and you want to sell it as let's take a commercial piece, and you want to offer it for sale all or part, but you're willing to sign a listing that says subject to the proper authorities approving a plat and allowing that to go ahead. You're actually stopping, with the way this is worded, anybody to even talk to anybody and negotiate selling a 1-acre tract off a 5-acre tract. And that's how we sell most of our commercial around here. Sure, it's subject, we don't close it. We sell it on a contract subject to getting a plat approved. You got 5, the commercial entity only wants 1, the restaurant or whatever. You say, well, I can't sell it to you and close it until I plat it, but I can surely negotiate with you a contract subject to the approval of a plat by the final authorities. If you can't do that, we can't sell this stuff. If the town of Edgewood, that's not allowed, then we're going to have a heck of a problem trying to compete with everybody else in the state to get that business in here.
You understand, Mr. Seegers, this language has been in there for like 15 years.
I'm sorry, second.
This language has been in there for 15 years.
Okay. Basically, it says even if you negotiate to sell, and the seller's in the same position, okay? It's your agent or the seller himself, like your property. You know, if you go up here and all of a sudden somebody approaches you and they say, I don't want 220 acres, I want a commercial acre down here. But I want to tie it up because I'm going to spend a lot of money doing my due diligence to see if I can use it, and I understand a plat has to be approved. You should be in that position as a seller, and your agent should be in that position. And this precludes that very specifically.
Have you done any of that in the last 10 years?
Probably, yeah. I've sold
So
1,000
it didn't stop
pieces.
you from doing it.
But, you know, but you are stopped by the words here, because if you negotiate to sell, the sale doesn't take place because it doesn't close, okay? There's lots of factors that have to happen, including platting by the authority. But this is the way we sell commercial land. This is the way we sell other pieces of land. And we're going to be guilty of a misdemeanor here for doing that.
Nobody's been hit with it yet that I know of.
Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
Mr. Seeger, that is a restatement of the state statute. And what I would submit is if you are doing it conditional upon a replat, then you're not in violation. It's just the negotiation to sell a piece of land that has never been subdivided, as happens in some areas where they split lots without going through the proper subdivision process. But if you say this is subject to approval by the town in a subdivision application, then you haven't committed the violation.
But what do you refer to as selling it? What's that mean? Closing it, you're talking about. But offering it subject to getting it platted is the way things are sold in this state.
And I'm saying that's not a violation.
But it says if you negotiate to sell, not that you sell, but just negotiate to sell. And I think those words are very unclear then.
Then talk to the state legislature.
Pardon?
Talk to the state legislature. It's a state statute.
I'm very familiar with that statute. I was here when it was written, okay, in 1973 and then beyond. And I've never been precluded from offering subject to platting, and I don't believe that we should do that here.
I'm saying you're not. You're not prohibited.
So the negotiating to sell should or should not be in there. Is that the meaning of this?
The meaning of it is if you're negotiating to split a lot without going through the process of subdividing, then that is a violation.
But you can negotiate, you're saying, to sell the lot if part of your contract says you must go through the platting process.
Correct.
Okay, I don't think that's clear the way this is written. It could be
Talk to the state legislature.
Anybody else? Tom, you want to ask her?
Yeah, I have a question. What is a development permit?
It is, you come in for an application, you're going to do any building on your property. Any building on your property.
So a customer calls our call center and says, I want service at this address, and we give them service. When do we ask for a development permit, or would we know there's a development permit?
Well, if the house is already there, then you would need to develop.
Okay, so there wouldn't have one.
Right.
This is only in the act of building something?
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody else? Council have any other questions for Ms. Mortensen? All the public portion of this closed and entertain a motion to continue this one to the 20th.
Yeah, we followed the same procedure. This has been the history and notice 2 meetings.
Yeah, right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Because this is a simple amendment, and because it's simple enough that we are simply correcting a a few errors, I would move that we approve the changes for this section of our subdivision ordinance.
Tonight, don't we need a second hearing?
Do we need a second hearing?
Council?
That was my belief, that for this subdivision ordinance, you do not need a second hearing for it. The state statute says you can do it with simply 15 days' notice.
Mr. Mayor, if I may also, we as a council have over the last 10 years or so on simple changes to ordinances set precedents in doing this several times.
Well, I guess it's up to council how you want to do that. You're saying they could go ahead and do it tonight?
Yes.
Okay, so a motion, did you make a motion on that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I did.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve these changes as advertised here to section 15, the penalties of the subdivision ordinance. And for the most part, it's just changing stuff that was overlooked to the amounts set out in the previous ordinance with the $500 caps on them, and leaving that one down at number 4 at the $100 as per state statute. Do it on a roll call vote and start on that end. Councilor Abrams?
Aye.
Councilor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilor Abraham?
Nay.
Councilor Holly?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item, discussion, consideration, action of financial report for the month of July 2017. Mr. Torres.
Mayor, Council, you have before you is the financial report. If you go to the second page, the GRT distribution, you can see we're off to a pretty decent start this year. I hope the trend maintains. July was a pretty good month. August was good as well, so like I said, I just hope it continues to head in that direction. You will see some changes in the upcoming Treasurer's report, the Encode report that you'll be receiving. We're going to be in the process of making the budgetary changes where we have the different funds and consolidating those over. So over the next couple months, you'll probably notice those transitions where there might be a fund balance on here now that's going to disappear and kind of absorb into the general fund. It's just time consuming to go through each fund, zero out the line items, and transfer them into a new one.
Yeah.
So over the course of time, you'll see those changes.
And you've also got the bills here.
I have a question though. There's been anomalies in the past. Would this be an appropriate moment to speak to those anomalies that the Department of Finance has not given us answers for?
Most definitely. It's tax and rev. They stand by the taxpayer confidentiality whenever it seems fitting to them. There is a lawsuit that is currently underway from several municipalities. As we find more information out, we'll definitely pass that on. There's the potential that it could become class action. If that's the case, we'll bring it before council to see if we would like to join in on that, if it does come to that.
Trolling for participants.
But the way the current administration at Tax and Rev, the way they currently interpret the law is if your balance exceeds, 20% of your entire current year's distribution, then they'll notify you of a change. And that's a year's average. So going off of last year, that'd be what, $730,000 that our distribution would have to vary for them to notify us. So they can change it all they want and not give us any notification the way it currently is.
So in other words, they do not have to answer unless it meets a certain threshold.
Correct.
Of your annual, there's another thing they do that's maddening. They take money in from the taxpayers, The businesses all end up paying GRTs. At the same time, a lot of those same taxpayers submit amended returns or whatever, or requests that they've overpaid or something. So they sit there and they pay them back as they come in, kinda, and that kind of depletes that fund down. So then when it's time to pay out the monthly ones, it's like, oh, we only got this much, so send that out, kind of spread it around. And there's not really a way to deal with that, because the taxpayer is allowed to send in an amended one or say, hey, I've paid too much, or you owe me back. At the same time that money is getting ready to go out to all the little towns and that, it's being depleted by that, and they're paying it in, so it's like coming in, going out, all at the same time. And then when it's time to make that monthly payment, there's only X amount in the till to pay it with, so they sort of spread it around. They were telling us that, you know, it's these taxpayers, which they have the right to do, is ask for a refund or something they paid too much. And so sort of one side of tax and revs paying out that stuff from the same till that's going to be used to send out the monthly payment. And it gets weird, but then you run into the wall of, well, this is just how we do it. Money's coming in, money's going out.
And unless we know a specific taxpayer, so if we just, and I'll just throw their name out there because they're the biggest one everyone recognizes, Walmart. So if we have a suspicion Walmart did something, we could potentially request from Tax and Rev them to investigate them specifically. But that's not a guarantee that they're going to tell us the results or if there's anything that happened. We really have no recourse to look into it. I mean, we can stomp our feet and yell at Tax and Rev all we want, and unless it crosses those thresholds, they're under no obligation to let us know.
There was a thing on the news, it's been a while back now, where they were saying that they had overpaid many municipalities back in October of last year or something like that. And so they were taking the money back. Well, with the way ours was fluctuating at that time, how would we have known they overpaid us?
Right.
And that they were going to take it back? You know, there's no way to track that what they're paying us is what we really should be getting, and if what they're paying us back is really what they owed us, or was it just a really good month?
Right.
You know, we have no way, that's very
And that's that thing about the
frustrating.
till, you know, there's money going out of it this way, refunding some to taxpayers, all the while money's coming into it, and there's sort of there's never like a fixed amount, or somebody says, just let that come in and then pay out refunds from some other fund. They pay it out of the same fund. Another guy, he's walking in, refunding Walmart or whoever, then the guy goes to write the checks out, it's like, well, we only got this much money, well, send it out. That's why that lawsuit, they're trolling to try to figure out how to attack on that.
No.
Because it's been very frustrating since that started happening. It started happening about 2 years ago. You know, there was
Actually,
never a
that
problem.
one with Artesia was way back in the 80s.
Oh, was it? Okay,
Yeah.
well, it started happening to us, but I
Mhm.
noticed it about 2 years ago.
And one of the things that I think when we have our legislative breakfast, we should, you know, ask our legislators to look into that, and maybe instead of applying the 20% rule over a yearly average, make it a 20% rule over our monthly average. You know, so that way when we do get those big hits, okay, that's clearly 20% of our monthly, because the way it currently is, we would have to see a negative, either a negative 730,000 or a positive 730,000 fluctuation for us to even be
To trigger
notified.
it, right. Fulgenetti was on there and he said, you know, this is some accounting trickery from the
That's
guys
what
in the
I
roundhouse.
That's what I believe too.
So it's like, well, who do you want to get after? I mean, Tax and Rev, you can beat on them bureaucrats just so much. The real problem's more up at the roundhouse. They've been doing some stuff, accounting tricks, and it keeps showing up for all these municipalities and counties. That's why they're looking into this class action suit.
And you know, how many governments are running a Ponzi scheme?
Yeah.
And
But-
if they can keep it for 2 months, I mean, they earn quite a bit of interest on
Of
it.
course, that begs the question to Fulgenetti and them, you're up there lobbying for us municipalities, how are you letting them, you're not be doing much of a job, they're pulling all these stunts off.
They have been complaining about that for the last 2 years.
Yeah. It's
Because
like,
it
you know,
just suddenly became a big issue for multiple municipalities.
But he was telling that Artesia and them, there's a couple of them went back into the 80s. They've been dogging tax and rev for this stuff. But that's what they're hoping to move along with that.
So we may have some transparency
Issues.
Well, my pet peeve is the Inspection of Public Records Act doesn't apply to the legislature.
Yeah.
And that thing back in here on that governmental conduct has that little thing, does not apply to legislature.
Except legislature.
Yeah.
I know.
They do have it nice. So council, if you got any questions, otherwise I'll accept the motion to accept the financial report for the month of July.
I move that we accept the financial report for the month of July.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to accept the financial report for the month of July 2017. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Announcements and calendar review. I got that mayor's summit tomorrow, whatever, in Albuquerque. I'd see if I can bring you back any better news, but I'm not expecting it. Next regular council meeting will be September 20th. We're going to have a pretty good assortment of stuff to deal with at that one. Future agenda items. Carla, I think we've got...
We've got the public hearing, the continuation of the
Right.
first public hearing.
Of the zoning
We've got
one.
Mr. Pillar's appeal coming back for final
Right.
action.
Other than that, we can start into closed session. I'll accept a motion to go into closed session.
Mr. Mayor, one quick question about this invitation to the Cornerstone.
Which one? The judges.
You didn't open your envelope?
Well, I don't know.
It's confusing. You can just jump over
Mayor and Council, if I may, so Judge White is very excited to be moving into the police station, and he would like to lay a cornerstone for the building. But I think it's a little bit premature. We hope to have him in this year, but definitely will not be ready by September 22nd.
So this simply is a ceremony?
It is a ceremonial thing for, yes,
Well, then I see nothing wrong with the ceremony.
definitely not.
People,
Wear your hat.
I will wear my hat. Yeah, the judge liked that hat.
Can I ask when that's scheduled for?
What's that?
When is that scheduled for?
22nd. 22nd.
So close to 4, you will all attend?
At 9:30 a.m.
Right, but it will be at the Masonic Lodge up here.
Is it at the lodge or out at the? It's at the building.
Oh, it's installation by the lodge. I'm sorry. Yes, it will be at the,
Will you all be attending?
You could post a possible quorum, yeah.
yes.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we go into closed session pursuant of NMSA 1978, H7. The following and only the following will be discussed in closed session. Update on threatened pending litigation in which the governing body was or may become a participant.
You got a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to go into closed session pursuant to NMSA 1978 H7. Following will be discussed in closed session, an update on threatened or pending litigation. Start on this end, roll call vote. Councilor Holly?
Aye.
Councilor Abraham?
Aye.
Councilor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilor Abrams?
Aye.
We're going into closed session. Come back into open session, and I'll entertain a motion to...
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we come back into open session. In closed session, only the topic on the agenda was discussed, no decisions were made.
That's Councilor Abrams. Do you so affirm, Councilor Simmons?
I so affirm.
Counselor Abraham, do you so affirm?
I so affirm.
Counselor Holly, do you so affirm?
I so affirm.
Mayor, I so affirm myself. Start on that end, take a vote.
Aye.
Counselor Simmons?
Aye.
Counselor Abraham?
Aye.
Counselor Holly?
Aye.
Back in. Counselor Simmons, you have the last act.
Mr. Mayor, I move we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. So I'll take my parade out the door.
Time?
9:51.
Thank you, Linda.